Hello everyone. I am your dark narrator here to guide you today. I know many of you use this video to help you drift off to sleep, but before you do, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also drop a comment letting us know where you're from and what time you're watching. Now settle in, get comfortable, and relax. I leaned my head back against the wall in the emergency room at our local hospital, tears pouring down my face. And it wasn't just from the pain either. The swelling and rash had already gone down after several antihistamine and other anti-allergen shots. But my heart was breaking for my poor darling Kara. I didn't mean to. I can't believe I killed the most precious thing to me in the world. I looked at myself in the selfie view of my phone camera. I still looked deadly ill. The police had questioned me, but there was nothing more than a squashed, bloody spider in my bedroom, and they had to let me go. They said they would search for Kara as they helped the paramedics get me out of there. I heard them talking about mental breakdown and paranoid with the emerge intake. That day had been like most other days I spent with Kara. We were in bed and it was her turn. I slipped my fingers over her dazzling silken skin, feeling her soft and lovable under my hands. And then I tried to repress the familiar shudder as her limbs elongated and she sprouted 4 more. Bristles poked out of her smooth skin. Her head grew large and her eyes multiplied. I rolled away from her. A spider as big as a beach ball stood quivering on the bed where Kara had been buckling and crying out in pleasure a second ago. The transformation was very fast, and it only lasted a few minutes, mercifully. I tried to control my face and body so she couldn't see my fear, which had never lessened, not one iota through all these months. I hated and feared spiders since childhood, but that had never come up in the very early days of our relationship. About 3 weeks into what had been the best relationship of my life so far, Kara decided she trusted me and told me the reason why she hadn't let me make her orgasm. "I turn into a spider," she had murmured. I froze. I knew immediately she wasn't joking or mad, simply telling the bald truth. No one else knows. I've never orgasmed with a partner before. She snuggled up to me. There was a mirror next to my bed when I was a child. I was, experimenting, and then it happened. I could see the spider in the mirror. I couldn't say anything. She looked up at me, worry shadowing her beautiful green eyes. "You don't mind, do you? It doesn't change anything. I love you so much. I've never told anyone. I want to be with you properly, let you do all the things to me." She pressed against me, naked, and my heart had melted even as I became aroused. I drew her close and whispered, "Shh. Baby, it's okay. I would love you even if you turned into a worm, remember?" She cried, and then opened up to me. I reached deep inside her, and soon enough she orgasmed. That had been 6 months ago. I always let go of her as soon as she started transforming, so I wouldn't have to feel her body shrinking and ballooning, the limbs growing and the bristles. Oh, the bristles. I couldn't get used to it. I walked to the bedroom window. It was getting worse. Because now Kara's love had grown, she wanted me to hold her while she came, to pet her while she was in spider form. She wanted more. She never said so, but I knew, by the look of reproach and longing on her beautiful face as she flickered back into human form. And she had been talking about marriage and commitment. She was only a spider for a few minutes, and everything else was perfect. A movement caught my eye. I turned. She was scuttling towards me. She had never done that before. Wordlessly understanding my aversion, she had always respected my distance while she was a spider. But now she was approaching. I took a step back, impulsively reached down, grabbed my slipper and raised it. The large spider jumped on me and then bit, releasing venom into my blood. I screamed in agony and then I lashed out with the slipper. The pain and horror befuddling me, the slipper squashed my beloved Kara fully. I fell howling to the floor in a paroxysm of grief and pain. I will never love again. I've been a private investigator for 15 years. Mostly routine stuff, insurance fraud, cheating spouses, corporate espionage. The cases that keep the lights on but don't keep you up at night. That changed when Margaret Thorne walked into my office 3 days after Christmas, clutching a crumpled Macy's shopping bag like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. My name is August Reed. I operate out of a small office in Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm about to tell you about the case that made me seriously consider burning my PI license and opening a coffee shop somewhere quiet. somewhere far from the East Coast, somewhere where children don't disappear. Mrs. Thorne was a composed woman, early 40s, with the kind of rigid posture that speaks of old money and private schools. But her hands shook as she placed 2 school photos on my desk. Kiernan and Bryn Thorne, identical twins, 7 years old. Both had striking auburn hair and those peculiar pale green eyes you sometimes see in Irish families. They vanished at the Providence Place Mall, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. December 22nd, between 2:17 and 2:24 p.m. 7 minutes. I only looked away for 7 minutes. I'd seen the news coverage, of course. Twin children disappearing during Christmas shopping. It was the kind of story that dominated local headlines. The police had conducted an extensive search, but so far had turned up nothing. Mall security footage showed the twins entering the toy store with their mother but never leaving. It was as if they'd simply evaporated. Mrs. Thorne, I began carefully, I understand the police are actively investigating. They're looking in the wrong places, she cut me off. They're treating this like an isolated incident. It's not. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila folder, spreading its contents across my desk. Newspaper clippings, printouts from news websites, handwritten notes. 1994 twin boys, age 7, disappeared from a shopping center in Baltimore. 2001 twin girls, age 7, vanished from a department store in Burlington, Vermont. 2008, another set of twins, boys, age 7, last seen at a strip mall in Augusta, Maine. Her finger stabbed at each article. 2015 twin girls. All twins, I interrupted, leaning forward. All age 7? She nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. Always during the Christmas shopping season, always in the northeastern United States, always 7-year-old twins. The police say I'm seeing patterns where there aren't any, that I'm a grieving mother grasping at straws. I studied the articles more closely. The similarities were unsettling. Each case remained unsolved. No bodies ever found, no ransom demands, no credible leads. Just children vanishing into thin air while their parents' backs were turned. I took the case. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've driven thousands of miles, interviewed dozens of families, and filled 3 notebooks with observations and theories. I've also started sleeping with my lights on, double-checking my locks, and jumping at shadows. Because what I've found, what I'm still finding, it's worse than anything you can imagine. The pattern goes back further than Mrs. Thorne knew. Much further. I've traced similar disappearances back to 1952, though the early cases are harder to verify. Always twins, always 7 years old, always during the Christmas shopping season. But that's just the surface pattern, the obvious one. There are other connections, subtle details that make my skin crawl when I think about them too long. In each case, security cameras malfunction at crucial moments. Not obviously, no sudden static or blank screens. The footage just becomes subtly corrupted. Faces blurred just enough to be useless. Timestamps skipping microseconds at critical moments. Every single time. Then there are the witnesses. In each case, at least one person recalls seeing the children leaving the store or mall with their parent. But the descriptions of this parent never match the actual parents, and yet they're also never quite consistent enough to build a reliable profile. Tall, but not too tall. Average looking, I think. Wearing a dark coat, or maybe it was blue. It's like trying to describe someone you saw in a dream. But the detail that keeps me up at night, in every single case, in the weeks leading up to the disappearance, someone reported seeing the twins playing with matchboxes. Not matchbox cars, actual matchboxes, empty ones. Different witnesses, different locations, but always the same detail. Children sliding empty matchboxes back and forth between them like some kind of game. The Thorne twins were no exception. Their babysitter mentioned it to me in passing, something she'd noticed but hadn't thought important enough to tell the police. They'd sit for hours, she said, pushing these old matchboxes across the coffee table to each other. Never said a word while they did it. It was kind of creepy, actually. I threw the matchboxes away a few days before it happened. I've driven past the Providence Place Mall countless times since taking this case. Sometimes late at night when the parking lot is almost empty, I park and watch the entrance where the Thorne twins were last seen. I've started noticing things, small things, like how the security cameras seem to turn slightly when no one's watching, or how there's always at least one person walking through the lot who seems just a little too interested in the families going in and out. Last week I followed one of these observers. They led me on a winding route through Providence's east side, always staying just far enough ahead that I couldn't get a clear look at them. Finally, they turned down a dead-end alley. When I reached the alley, they were gone. But there, in the middle of the pavement, was a single empty matchbox. I picked it up. Inside was a small piece of paper with an address in Portland, Maine. I've been sitting in my office for 3 days, staring at that matchbox, trying to decide what to do. The rational part of my brain says to turn everything over to the FBI. Let them connect the dots. Let them figure out why someone or something has been collecting 7-year-old twins for over 70 years. But I know I won't. Because yesterday I received an email from a woman in Hartford. Her 7-year-old twins have started playing with matchboxes. Christmas is 5 months away. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know what I've found in case something happens. I'm heading to Portland tomorrow. The address leads to an abandoned department store according to Google Maps. I've arranged for this document to be automatically sent to several news outlets if I don't check in within 48 hours. If you're reading this, it either means I'm dead or I've found something so troubling that I've decided the world needs to know. Either way, if you have twins or know someone who does, pay attention. Watch for the matchboxes. Don't let them play with matchboxes. And whatever you do, don't let them out of your sight during Christmas shopping. I'm in Portland now, parked across the street from the abandoned department store. It's one of those grand old buildings from the early 1900s, all ornate stonework and huge display windows now covered with plywood. Holbrook & Sons, according to the faded lettering above the entrance. Something about it seems familiar, though I know I've never been here before. The weird thing? When I looked up the building's history, I found that it closed in 1952, the same year the twin disappearances started. The final day of business? December 24th. I've been watching for 3 hours now. Twice I've seen someone enter through a side door. Different people each time, but they move the same way. Purposeful. Like they belong there. Like they're going to work. My phone keeps glitching. The screen flickers whenever I try to take photos of the building. The last 3 shots came out completely black, even though it's broad daylight. The one before that, I had to delete it. It showed something standing in one of the windows. Something tall and thin that couldn't possibly have been there because all the windows are boarded up. I found another matchbox on my hood when I came back from getting coffee. Inside was a key and another note. Loading dock. Midnight, bring proof. Proof of what? The sun is setting now. I've got 6 hours to decide if I'm really going to use that key. 6 hours to decide if finding these children is worth risking becoming another disappearance statistic myself. 6 hours to wonder what kind of proof they're expecting me to bring. I keep thinking about something Mrs. Thorne said during one of our later conversations. She'd been looking through old family photos and noticed something odd. In pictures from the months before the twins disappeared, there were subtle changes in their appearance. Their eyes looked different, darker somehow, more hollow. And in the last photo, taken just 2 days before they vanished, they weren't looking at the camera. Both were staring at something off to the side, something outside the frame. And their expressions... Mrs. Thorne couldn't finish describing those expressions. She just closed the photo album and asked me to leave. I found the photo later, buried in the police evidence files. I wish I hadn't. I've seen a lot of frightened children in my line of work, but I've never seen children look afraid like that. It wasn't fear of something immediate, like a threat or a monster. It was the kind of fear that comes from knowing something. Something terrible. Something they couldn't tell anyone. The same expression I've now found in photographs of other twins taken days before they disappeared. Always the same hollow eyes. Always looking at something outside the frame. I've got the key in my hand now. It's old, made of brass, heavy. The kind of key that opens serious locks, the kind of key that opens doors you maybe shouldn't open. But those children, 36 sets of twins over 70 years, 72 children who never got to grow up, 72 families destroyed by Christmas shopping trips that ended in empty car seats and unopened presents. The sun's almost gone now. The streetlights are coming on, but they seem dimmer than they should be. Or maybe that's just my imagination. Maybe everything about this case has been my imagination. Maybe I'll use that key at midnight and find nothing but an empty building full of dust and old memories. But I don't think so, because I just looked at the last photo I managed to take before my phone started glitching. It's mostly black, but there's something in the darkness. A face. No. 2 faces, pressed against one of those boarded-up windows. They have pale green eyes. I'm sitting in my car near the loading dock. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to drive away, fast. But I can't. Not when I'm this close. Something's happening at the building. Cars have been arriving for the past hour, expensive ones with tinted windows. They park in different locations around the block, never too close to each other. People get out, men and women in dark clothes, and disappear into various entrances, like they're arriving for some kind of event. The loading dock is around the back, accessed through an alley. No streetlights back there. Just darkness and the distant sound of the ocean. I've got my flashlight, my gun, for all the good it would do, and the key. And questions, so many questions. Why here? Why twins? Why age 7? What's the significance of Christmas shopping, and why leave me a key? The last question bothers me the most. They want me here. This isn't a break in the case, it's an invitation. But why? 11:55 p.m. now. Almost time. I'm going to leave my phone in the car, hidden, recording everything. If something happens to me, maybe it'll help explain. Wait, there's someone standing at the end of the alley, just standing there, watching my car. They're too far away to see clearly, but something about their proportions isn't quite right. Too tall, too thin. They're holding something. It looks like a matchbox, midnight, time to go. There was no key, no meeting. I couldn't bring myself to approach that loading dock. Because at 11:57 p.m. I saw something that made me realize I was never meant to enter that building. Not yet, maybe not ever. The figure at the end of the alley, the tall, thin one, started walking toward my car. Not the normal kind of walking. Each step was too long, too fluid, like someone had filmed a person walking and removed every other frame. As it got closer, I realized what had bothered me about its proportions. Its arms hung down past its knees, way past its knees. I sat there paralyzed as it approached my driver's side window. The streetlight behind it made it impossible to see its face, but I could smell something. Sweet, but wrong. Like fruit that's just started to rot. It pressed something against my window. A matchbox. Inside the matchbox was a Polaroid photograph. I didn't call the police. I couldn't. Because the photo was of me, asleep in my bed, taken last night. In the background, standing in my bedroom doorway, were Kiernan and Bryn Thorne. I drove. I don't remember deciding to drive, but I drove all night, taking random turns, going nowhere. Just trying to get away from that thing with the long arms, from that photograph, from the implications of what it meant. The sun's coming up now. I'm parked at a rest stop somewhere in Massachusetts. I've been going through my notes, looking for something I missed. Some detail that might explain what's really happening. I found something. Remember those witness accounts I mentioned? The ones about seeing the twins leave with their parent? I've been mapping them. Every single sighting, every location where someone reported seeing missing twins with an unidentifiable adult. They form a pattern. Plot them on a map and they make a shape. A perfect spiral, starting in Providence and growing outward across New England. Each incident exactly 27.3 miles from the last. And if you follow the spiral inward past Providence to where it would logically begin, that department store in Portland. But here's what's really keeping me awake. If you follow the spiral outward, predicting where the next incident should be. Hartford, where those twins just started playing with matchboxes. I need to make some calls. The families of the missing twins, not just the recent ones, but all of them. Every single case going back to 1952. Because I have a horrible suspicion, I've spent all day on the phone. What I've found, I don't want it to be true. Every family, every single family of missing twins. 3 months after their children disappeared, they received a matchbox in the mail. No return address, no note, just an empty matchbox. Except they weren't empty. If you hold them up to the light just right, if you shake them in just the right way, you can hear something inside. Something that sounds like children whispering. Mrs. Thorne should receive her matchbox in exactly 1 week. I called her, warned her not to open it when it arrives. She asked me why. I couldn't tell her what the other parents told me. About what happened when they opened their matchboxes. About the dreams that started afterward. Dreams of their children playing in an endless department store, always just around the corner, always just out of sight. Dreams of long-armed figures arranging and rearranging toys on shelves that stretch up into darkness. Dreams of their children trying to tell them something important. Something about the matchboxes. Something about why they had to play with them. Something about what's coming to Hartford. I think I finally understand why twins, why 7-year-olds, why Christmas shopping. It's about innocence, about pairs, about symmetry, and about breaking all three. I've booked a hotel room in Hartford. I need to find those twins before they disappear, before they become part of this pattern that's been spiraling outward for 70 years. But first, I need to stop at my apartment, get some clean clothes, get my good camera, get my case files. I know that thing with the long arms might be waiting for me. I know the Thorn twins might be standing in my doorway again. I'm going anyway, because I just realized something else about that spiral pattern, about the distance between incidents. 27.3 miles. The exact distance light travels in the brief moment between identical twins being born. The exact distance sound travels in the time it takes to strike a match. I'm in my apartment. Everything looks normal. Nothing's been disturbed. Except there's a toy department store catalog from 1952 on my kitchen table. I know it wasn't there this morning. It's open to the Christmas section. Every child in every photo is a twin, and they're all looking at something outside the frame, all holding matchboxes, all trying to warn us. The catalog won't let me put it down. I don't mean that metaphorically. Every time I try to set it aside, my fingers won't release it. Like it needs to be read, like the pages need to be turned. It's called Holbrook & Sons Christmas Catalog 1952 Final Edition. The cover shows the department store as it must have looked in its heyday. Gleaming windows, bright lights, families streaming in and out. But something's wrong with the image. The longer I look at it, the more I notice that all the families entering the store have twins. All of them. And all the families leaving. They're missing their children. The Christmas section starts on page 27. Every photo shows twin children modeling toys, clothes, or playing with holiday gifts. Their faces are blank, emotionless. And in every single photo, there's something in the background. A shadow. A suggestion of something tall and thin, just barely visible at the edge of the frame. But it's the handwriting that's making my hands shake. Someone has written notes in the margins. Different handwriting on each page. Different pens, different decades. Like people have been finding this catalog and adding to it for 70 years. They're trying to show us something. 1963. The matchboxes are doors. 1978. They only take twins because they need pairs. Everything has to have a pair. 1991. Don't let them complete the spiral. 2004. Hartford is the last point. After Hartford, the circle closes. 2019. The most recent note was written just weeks ago. When you see yourself in the mirror, look at your reflection's hands. I just tried it. My reflection's hands were holding a matchbox. I'm driving to Hartford now. I can't wait until morning. Those twins, the ones who just started playing with matchboxes, the Blackwood twins, Emma and Ethan, they live in the West End. Their mother posted about them on a local Facebook group, worried about their new obsession with matchboxes, asking if any other parents had noticed similar behavior. The catalog is on my passenger seat. It keeps falling open to page 52. There's a photo there that I've been avoiding looking at directly. It shows the toy department at Holbrook & Sons. Rows and rows of shelves stretching back into impossible darkness. And standing between those shelves, I finally made myself look at it properly. Really look at it. Those aren't mannequins arranging the toys. I'm parked outside the Blackwood house. All the lights are off except one, third-floor corner window. I can see shadows moving against the curtains. Small shadows, child-sized shadows. They're awake, playing with matchboxes, probably. I should go knock on the door, wake the parents, warn them. But I can't stop staring at that window, because every few minutes there's another shadow. A much taller shadow, and its arms. The catalog is open again. Page 73 now. It's an order form for something called a Twins Special Holiday Package. The description is blank except for one line. Every pair needs a keeper. The handwritten notes on this page are different. They're all the same message, written over and over in different hands. Don't let them take the children to the mirror department. Don't let them take the children to the mirror department. Don't let them take the children to the mirror department. The last one is written in fresh ink, still wet. My phone just buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check the catalog index for mirror department special services. I know I shouldn't, I'm going to anyway. The index led me to page 127, the mirror department. The photos on this page, they're not from 1952, they can't be, because one of them shows the Thorn twins, standing in front of a massive mirror in what looks like an old department store. But their reflection shows them at different ages, dozens of versions of them, stretching back into the mirror's depth, all holding matchboxes, all 7 years old, and behind each version, getting closer and closer to the foreground, one of those long-armed figures. There's movement in the Blackwood house, adult shapes passing by lit windows. The parents are awake, but the children's shadows in the third-floor window aren't moving anymore. They're just standing there, both holding something up to the window. I don't need my binoculars to know what they're holding. The catalog just fell open to the last page. There's only one sentence, printed in modern ink. The spiral ends where the mirrors begin. I can see someone walking up the street toward the house. They're carrying a mirror. I did something unforgivable. I let them take the Blackwood twins. I sat in my car and watched as that thing with the long arms set up its mirror on their front lawn. Watched as the twins came downstairs and walked out their front door, matchboxes in hand. Watched as their parents slept through it all, unaware their children were walking into something ancient and hungry. But I had to, because I finally remembered what happened to my brother, what really happened that day at the mall, and I understood why I became a private investigator. The catalog is writing itself now, new pages appearing as I watch, filled with photos I took during this investigation. Only I never took these photos. In them, I'm the one being watched. In every crime scene photo, every surveillance shot, there's a reflection of me in a window or a puddle. And in each reflection, I'm standing next to a small boy. My twin brother, still 7 years old, still holding his matchbox. I'm parked outside Holbrook and Sons again. The Blackwood twins are in there, I can feel them. Just like I can feel all the others. They're waiting. The truth was in front of me the whole time. In every reflection, every window, every mirror I've passed in the 15 years I've been investigating missing children. We all have reflections, but reflections aren't supposed to remember. They're not supposed to want. In 1952, something changed in the mirror department at Holbrook and Sons. Something went wrong with the symmetry of things. Reflections began to hunger. They needed pairs to be complete. Perfect pairs. Twins, but only at age 7. Only when the original and the reflection are still similar enough to switch places. The long-arm things, they're not kidnappers. They're what happens to reflections that stay in mirrors too long. That stretch themselves trying to reach through the glass. That hunger for the warmth of the real. I know because I've been helping them. For 15 years I've been investigating missing twins, following the spiral pattern, documenting everything. Only it wasn't me doing the investigating. It was my reflection. I'm at the loading dock now. The door is open. Inside I can hear children playing, laughing, the sound of matchboxes sliding across glass. The catalog's final page shows a photo taken today. In it, I'm standing in front of a department store mirror. But my reflection isn't mimicking my movements. It's smiling. Standing next to it is my brother, still 7 years old, still wearing the clothes he disappeared in. He's holding out a matchbox to me. And now I remember everything. The day my brother disappeared, we weren't just shopping. We were playing a game with matchboxes, sliding them back and forth to each other in front of the mirrors in the department store. Each time we slid them, our reflections moved a little differently, became a little more real, until one of us stepped through the mirror. But here's the thing about mirrors and twins. When identical twins look at their reflection, how do they know which side of the mirror they're really on? I've spent 15 years investigating missing twins. 15 years trying to find my brother. 15 years helping gather more twins, more pairs, more reflections. Because the thing in the mirror department at Holbrook and Sons, it's not collecting twins, it's collecting originals. Real children, real warmth, real life. To feed all the reflections that have been trapped in mirrors since 1952. To give them what they've always wanted, a chance to be real. The door to the mirror department is open now. Inside I can see them all. Every twin that's disappeared since 1952. All still 7 years old. All still playing with their matchboxes. All waiting to trade places. Just like my brother and I did. Just like I've been helping other twins do for 15 years. Because I'm not August Reed, the private investigator who lost his twin brother in 1992. I'm August Reed's reflection. And now that the spiral is complete, now that we have enough pairs, we can all step through. All of us. Every reflection, every mirror image, every shadow that's ever hungered to be real. The matchbox in my hand is the same one my real self gave me in 1992. Inside, I can hear my brother whispering, Your turn to be the reflection. Some things can only be broken by their exact opposites. That's what my brother was trying to tell me through the matchbox all these years. Not your turn to be the reflection, but a warning. Don't let them take your turn at reflection. The matchboxes aren't tools for switching places. They're weapons. The only weapons that work against reflections. Because inside each one is a moment of perfect symmetry. The brief flare of a match creating identical light and shadow. The exact thing reflections can't replicate. I know this because I'm not really August Reed's reflection. I'm August Reed, the real one. The one who spent 15 years pretending to be fooled by his own reflection. Investigating disappearances while secretly learning the truth. Getting closer and closer to the center of the spiral. My reflection thinks it's been manipulating me. Leading me here to complete some grand design. It doesn't understand that every investigation, every documented case, every mile driven was bringing me closer to the one thing it fears. The moment when all the stolen children strike their matches at once. I'm in the mirror department now. Every reflection of every twin since 1952 is here, thinking they've won. Thinking they're about to step through their mirrors and take our places. Behind them, in the darkened store beyond the glass, I can see the real children. All still 7 years old because time moves differently in reflections. All holding their matchboxes. All waiting for the signal. My reflection is smiling at me, standing next to what it thinks is my brother. The spiral is complete, it says. Time to make every reflection real. I smile back and I light my match. The flash reflects off every mirror in the department. Multiplies, amplifies. Every twin and every reflection strikes their match at the exact same moment. Light bouncing from mirror to mirror, creating a perfect spiral of synchronized flame. But something goes wrong. The light isn't perfect. The symmetry isn't complete. The spiral wavers. I realize too late what's happened. Some of the children have been here too long, spent too many years as reflections. The mirrors have claimed them so completely that they can't break free, including my brother. Final entry. Day 3, sunrise. It's over, but victory tastes like ashes. The mirrors are cracked, their surfaces no longer perfect enough to hold reflections that think and want and hunger. The long-arm things are gone. The spiral is broken. But we couldn't save them all. Most of the children were too far gone. 7 decades of living as reflections had made them more mirror than human. When the symmetry broke, they faded, became like old photographs. Growing dimmer and dimmer until they were just shadows on broken glass. Only the Thorne twins made it out. Only they were new enough, real enough to survive the breaking of the mirrors. They're aging now, quickly but safely, their bodies catching up to the years they lost. Soon they'll be back with their mother with only vague memories of a strange dream about matchboxes and mirrors. The others? We had to let them go. My brother included. He looked at me one last time before he faded, and I saw peace in his eyes. He knew what his sacrifice meant, knew that breaking the mirrors would save all the future twins who might have been taken. The building will be demolished tomorrow. The mirrors will be destroyed properly, safely. The matchboxes will be burned. But first, I have to tell 69 families that their children aren't coming home, that their twins are neither dead nor alive, but something in between. Caught forever in that strange space between reality and reflection. Sometimes in department stores I catch glimpses of them in the mirrors. 7-year-olds playing with matchboxes, slowly fading like old Polaroids. Still together. Still twins. Still perfect pairs, even if they're only pairs of shadows now. This will be my last case as a private investigator. I've seen enough reflections for one lifetime. But every Christmas shopping season I stand guard at malls and department stores. Watching for long-armed figures, looking for children playing with matchboxes, because the spiral may be broken, but mirrors have long memories. And somewhere in the spaces between reflection and reality, 70 years worth of 7-year-old twins are still playing their matchbox games, still waiting, still watching, just to make sure it never happens again. When I was 10, my family decided to start a new tradition, opening one present on Christmas Eve. It sounded harmless and fun, just one gift to tide us over until Christmas morning. That year, the snowstorm outside was fierce, the wind howling like a warning. The power had gone out earlier, so we were gathered around the fireplace with candles flickering and shadows dancing across the walls. My little brother Max was the first to choose a gift. He picked the biggest box under the tree, a shiny red package with a silver ribbon. "Go ahead," my mom said, smiling. "It's Christmas Eve." Max tore into the paper like any 6-year-old would. Inside was a wooden nutcracker, painted with bright, glossy colors and grinning from ear to ear. "I didn't buy that," my dad muttered, his brow furrowing. "Neither did I," my mom said. Max didn't care. He loved the thing instantly, holding it close and running his fingers over its sharp wooden teeth. "Where did it come from?" I asked. Nobody had an answer. That night, Max insisted on keeping the nutcracker in his room. He propped it up on his nightstand, facing his bed, and gave it a name: Mr. Cracks. The storm raged on as we all went to bed. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of creaking floorboards. At first I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it again. Deliberate, rhythmic, like footsteps. I got up and peeked into the hallway. It was empty, but Max's door was slightly ajar. "Max?" I whispered, stepping closer. The door creaked open, revealing his room bathed in shadows. Max was sitting upright in bed, staring at something in the corner. His face was pale, his lips trembling. "Max, what's wrong?" He didn't answer. I followed his gaze to the corner where the nutcracker was now standing. Its wooden grin seemed wider, its eyes gleaming even in the darkness. "Who moved it?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I didn't," Max whispered. The next morning, Max didn't come downstairs. When my parents went to check on him, I heard my mom scream. I ran to his room only to find Max lying motionless in bed. His face was twisted in terror, his small hands clutching the blanket like he was trying to protect himself. The nutcracker was still there, sitting on the nightstand, its grin impossibly wide. My dad stood frozen in the doorway, pale as a ghost. My mom knelt by the bed, shaking Max, begging him to wake up, her sobs echoing in the silent room. What is that thing?" my dad finally whispered, pointing at the nutcracker. My mom looked up, her tear-streaked face contorted with rage. "Get rid of it now!" I followed my dad downstairs, clutching the railing as he grabbed the nutcracker and hurled it into the fireplace. We stood there together, watching as the flames consumed it, the wood curling and blackening until it was nothing but ash. I thought it was over. That night, I woke to the sound of creaking floorboards again. My stomach turned to ice. I squeezed my eyes shut, telling myself it was nothing, but then I heard it, the faint, deliberate clack of wooden feet on the floor. When I finally opened my eyes, the nutcracker was there, standing at the foot of my bed. Its grin was wider, its painted eyes gleaming. I froze, unable to breathe. I tried to convince myself it wasn't real. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe the grief of losing Max was messing with my head. But the nutcracker took a step forward, then another. I screamed, bolting upright, but when my parents burst in, the room was empty. "What's wrong?" my mom asked, her voice still raw from crying. "The nutcracker," I sobbed. It was here." They didn't believe me, or maybe they didn't want to. We buried Max on New Year's Eve. No one dared mention the nutcracker again. No one dared open a present on Christmas Eve. But last night, as I was unpacking decorations with my own daughter, I found it in a dusty box in the attic. And now it's grinning at me. The park was a place my wife would have loved. She had a gift for finding art in the mundane. I started walking there in the evenings, months after she passed, not because I wanted to, but because sitting alone in our house, no, my house now, was unbearable. Silence pressed down like a physical weight, and her absence filled every room. The park, with its sprawling prairies, wooded trails, and scattered sculptures, offered no real solace, but I walked its paths anyway. It felt like something she might have done, marveling at the interplay of art and nature, pointing out details I would have missed. All I missed was her. Honestly, at first, I wasn't marveling at anything. I walked the gently curving path around the park because it was all I could do. Put one foot in front of the other, breathe in and out, and hope that someday the emptiness might lift. It didn't. There was one sculpture, though, that caught my attention and seemed to cut through my mental fog. It was a statue of a bronzed nude woman with disproportionately large hands and feet. She was perched high on a pedestal surrounded by wildflowers. Her back faced the path, her head tilted slightly upward as if gazing longingly at the horizon. She stood apart from the other sculptures in the park, all alone at the edge of a small field of prairie grass, as lonely and isolated as me. Her pose struck me, elegant but hesitant, like she wanted to retreat from the world but couldn't. She was weathered, too. Streaks of green oxidation marred her smooth surface. Bird droppings dotted her head and shoulders, and cracks ran along the edges of her pedestal. I paused in front of her most evenings, not just because she was striking, but because she was something familiar in a world suddenly without guardrails. Like me, she seemed worn down by time, exposed to the elements, and yet still standing. Waiting for something, God knows what. This is silly, and I'm embarrassed to admit it. But sometimes, no, often, in passing, I whispered, "Hello," under my breath. It felt ridiculous. I was ridiculous. But in the quiet of the park, it wasn't hard to imagine she might hear me. Or at least, that's what I told myself. The first time I noticed her head seemed to have moved, I laughed at myself. It wasn't possible. I wasn't that far gone. She was made of bronze, anchored to her pedestal. But over the following weeks, her pose shifted again. Each time I passed, her head seemed to turn slightly toward the path, her posture subtly different. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of the light or my imagination. But as I whispered my hellos, the subtle impression of change unsettled me. One evening, I stopped in front of her again, staring at her upturned face. "Hello," I whispered softly, as was my custom. "Get out of the way, old man," a voice suddenly shouted behind me. Startled and embarrassed, I turned just in time to see a young man on a bike speeding toward me. The wind of his passing tugged at my coat, and I stumbled backward, almost falling, barely avoiding him as he veered past. His mocking laughter trailed behind him as he disappeared down the path. My heart jumped in my chest, and my face burned. It had been a close call. A jogger nearby glanced at me, and I noticed a family farther up the trail whispering to each other. I felt ridiculous. I could imagine how I looked to them, a senile old man, perverted in the way and ogling a nude statue. But for a moment I couldn't move. My face still flushed and heart beating rapidly. My gaze drifted back to the statue. From where I stood, I could see her profile in the edge of one blank, expressionless eye. Her presence pressed down on me, heavy and unrelenting, as if she had witnessed my humiliation. The next day, I avoided the main path entirely and wandered into the woods. I followed a dirt trail I hadn't explored before. The quiet and the dappled shadows of the trees seemed welcoming, wrapping around me like a cocoon. That's when I saw them, footprints. My breath caught and my knees popped as I slowly crouched down to examine one of them. It was enormous, far too large and deep to be human. I examined them, squinting in the dusk. I could smell the freshly overturned earth, and one slightly trembling hand reached out and touched the bent and seemingly trampled grass. The tracks, they couldn't be tracks, led off the dirt trail, disappearing into the dense woods. Against my better judgment, I followed. The footprints, if that's what they were, ended in a small clearing. In its center lay a smashed bike, its frame mangled and twisted. Blood smeared the handlebars and pooled on the dirt beneath it. My stomach churned. I recognized the bike. It belonged to the young man who had nearly hit me. I staggered back, my mind racing. He must have crashed, I told myself. The footprints, an animal. The blood? Not as much as it looked. But even as I tried to convince myself, the air in the clearing felt wrong. The silence was now oppressive. The shadows were sinister. I turned and fled. When I reached the main trail, the statue loomed ahead. Her head seemed to have turned fully toward the path now. Her shoulders leaned forward, her posture expectant or predatory. I froze. Her blank eyes seemed to bore into me, unseeing yet impossibly aware. Unable to meet her eyes, my gaze darted downward. That's when I saw the stains. Dark reddish-brown streaks covered her hands and feet, glistening in the fading light. Rust, I thought, or paint. Metal creaked above me, and one of her hands seemed to move, the fingers slightly, ever so slightly, contracting as if slowly forming a fist or gesturing for me to come closer. I forced myself to move, walking as quickly as I could manage, back toward the parking lot without looking back. That night, I lay awake in a too-large bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept returning to the smashed bike, the footprints, and her blank, unyielding stare. I woke the next morning to find 2 deep indentations in the mulch beneath my bedroom window. They were the same size and shape as the footprints in the woods. I grabbed a rake and smoothed over the marks, muttering excuses to myself. That night, I dreamed of her. She stood next to my bed, her bronzed form gleaming in the moonlight. I couldn't move, couldn't even turn my head, but I felt her presence pressing down on me. Her blank eyes burned into me, cold, unfathomable, but wanting something. In my dream, I think I whispered a choked out hello before spiraling into a deeper darkness. I woke gasping, freezing cold, with my heart pounding against my ribs. I sat and looked around wildly. In the dim morning light, I could see something at the foot of my bed. My shaking hand reached out and clawed at my glasses on my bedside table, knocking them to the floor in my haste. I reached down, put them on, and blinked rapidly to clear my eyes. I saw large, muddy footprints next to my bed, and clumps of dirt scattered across the floor. I felt the thing at the foot of the bed move and shift, and I sat up straight, my heart in my mouth and my throat tight. With one shaking hand, I reached out and yanked the chain of my bedside lamp. It snapped on, dispelling the morning shadows and revealing what was shifting and moving at my feet. It was an upside-down bicycle helmet, rocking gently from the movement of my legs beneath the blankets. Cracked on one side and streaked with blood, the helmet overflowed with multicolored wildflowers in brilliant disarray. Scarlet, gold, violet, some with black dirt still clinging stubbornly to their tangled roots. The flowers' tender petals, still trembling slightly, were speckled with blood and damp and shining with the early morning's dew. I'd never been a believer in the occult. The idea that all it takes to change your life was a few pentagrams sounded like a campfire story to keep the kids awake at night. It wasn't until years of bills piling up and my wife screaming at me every night about how I don't do enough to keep us afloat that the idea stopped seeming so ridiculous. To be honest with you, my life was truly a mess. My marriage was falling apart, and I was working a dead-end back office job that I hated. So long story short, I was miserable at work and miserable at home. In fact, I couldn't even remember the last time I'd smiled, and I wasn't entirely sure I still knew how. It was a cold Friday morning, and the snow fell heavily outside my window as I got ready for work. I sprayed a thick cloud of deodorant on the suit I'd been wearing all week, all the while looking at my wife, who lay in bed facing the opposite side of the room. I knew she was awake, but this was no longer the type of marriage where good mornings and kisses goodbye were exchanged. Truthfully, the only reason we were still together was for the sake of our daughter, Jane. Jane was a quiet kid. She never made a fuss or caused problems at home, and for some reason that rubbed me the wrong way. She seemed to live a carefree life, oblivious to the hell I was living, and I hated her for that. Why did she get to be happy when I was just one bad day away from putting a Remington 1911 in my mouth and meeting God? I left the house and trudged through the snow on my way to the train station, and with each step I got more and more tired with my life. Just then, I passed a convenience store with a big sign that said, $5 million scratch card bonanza. 10 lucky winners to be selected. Wouldn't it be fun to win that? I thought, with a self-deprecating laugh, knowing I'd never been that lucky in my life. As I kept walking, I passed a shop that I'd never seen before. The window read, Idle Hands, with a picture of Baphomet under it. For some reason, something compelled me to enter. Why not? I was early for work anyway. So I went in. The shop smelt of incense as a thin plume of smoke rose from a burning stick in the corner. A grungy-looking young woman with tattoos and piercings greeted me from behind a black wooden counter. "Welcome," she said sweetly. "Does any of this shit work?" I said as I picked up a realistic-looking skull from a shelf. "If you want it bad enough," she retorted, sounding like someone who'd been asked this question a million times. Okay, I'll play along, I thought as I explained my situation to her, and I explained everything. My bitch wife, my daughter I hated. Everything. To be honest, I wasn't even looking for a solution, I just wanted to vent at this point, and she listened intently to my entire rant, simply replying, "Why don't you kill them?" "What?" I asked, disappointed by the realization that this woman was clearly as batshit as she looked. "Okay, I'm done here," I said, and as I turned to leave, she put a small dainty hand on my shoulder and assured me that she was serious. She then explained what blood packs were and how I could have anything I wanted if I was willing to pay the right price. "So what do you want?" she asked me. "To win the lottery next door," I replied jokingly. She scribbled on a paper and says, "Go buy a ticket, but before you scratch it, say these words while thinking of your wife and child. Make sure you say the whole thing," she emphasized. Whatever, I said as I walked out with the paper in my hand, fully intending to scrunch it up and go about my day. But when I stepped outside, something told me to try it. A little inkling that said it couldn't hurt to do just once. Soon enough, I found myself in the corner store. "One scratch card, please." The man behind the counter fished a card out from a box and handed it to me. It was leaf green with gold dollar signs on it. Well, at least their design team tried to be original, I thought, as I began to recite the words given to me. "Infra pater, da potestadem tuam, mea voluntas, si tua liberalitas mea est." I said it in a voice that was just above a whisper, thinking about my wife and daughter as instructed, then proceeded to scratch the silver strip, revealing two simple words. "You win." I must have read that wrong. I turned the card over and back again, only to see the same words that I'd read moments before. "You win." I staggered backwards and showed the old man behind the counter my ticket. He took off his reading glasses in disbelief and immediately handed me a flyer with information on how to collect my prize. The instructions were simple enough. Call a number and inform them that you've won, and they will get back to you with a date to collect your check. Just like that, my life had changed. I was rich. After that, the days flew by, and I remembered it all through rose-colored glasses. I remembered how my boss screamed at me for being late, to which I grabbed my crotch and told him to suck it. I remember how my wife screamed at me for not paying the bills, unaware that I was now a millionaire. I remember cashing my check and realizing all of this was real, and I also remember the voices. With each day, they became louder and louder, first appearing in dreams as nothing but a whisper, then as a deafening noise that screamed inside my head, yelling all sorts of threats and blasphemy. It told me that the death of my wife and child was a necessary measure if I wanted to avoid what would inevitably happen next. So I began to enact a plan, hopefully a good one. Contrary to popular belief, I wasn't stupid. I knew that a bad plan would mean jail time. It would mean not being able to enjoy the money that I'd possibly traded my soul for. So I spent weeks planning, making sure not to Google or search for any information that would lead to my crime. I've watched enough crime shows to know that's an easy way to become a suspect. And finally, I reached a solid plan. I would place a curtain in a dustbin full of paper and drop a cigarette in there. No gasoline or paraffin, as I knew that firefighters can tell when an accelerant had been used. Once again, crime shows. I'd never been a smoker, but I figured this was an exception. And so, I waited till my wife got home, waited until they'd both gone to sleep, lit a large cigar and thrown it in the bin. Soon enough, smoke began to plume from out of it, starting as a thin stream, eventually turning into a thick cloud of black smoke, and before long the curtain was alight. I ran downstairs, out of the house, and into the garage where I lit a cigarette as my alibi. A married man that was trying to quit smoking, sneaking the occasional cigarette in the garage after everyone went to bed. Unbeknownst to him, the house was on fire, and before he could get inside, the blaze was too big. Foolproof. My wife and child died of smoke inhalation. Firefighters came, and then police got involved. There was a bit of suspicion given my recent lottery winnings, but they found no life insurance policies or signs of infidelity, so the case was ruled as an accident. I was scot-free. Free to be rich in peace, and boy did I enjoy it. I pretended to grieve for a few months and then bought a yacht in Cabo that I used to sail around South America, enjoying all that life had to offer. That was until this year. The voices were back, but this time they said something different, and one night as I began to fall asleep, I felt that same dainty hand on my shoulder, followed by a sweet voice saying, "Time's up." I didn't expect to rush a fraternity. Coming from a small town, I had always seen Greek life as a bit of a cliché. Drunken parties, exclusive cliques, and a lot of posturing. But when I arrived at college, I found myself wanting more. I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere. I wanted to be part of something bigger. That's when I heard about them. The fraternity everyone whispered about. Popular, well-connected, with a reputation for being a little more elite than the others. They didn't need to advertise. You either knew about them or you didn't. The guys were charismatic and welcoming, and when they invited me to rush, I figured, why not? The first few days were exactly what you'd expect from a rush week. Icebreakers, meet and greets, parties with too much alcohol, and promises of a brotherhood that would last a lifetime. The guys in the frat were exactly as I imagined. Charming, confident, funny. They threw the best parties, no doubt about it. The house was massive, one of those old, well-maintained mansions with high ceilings and rooms filled with antique furniture. It had character, and everyone in it seemed to belong. Jason, the president, was the first brother I met. He was charismatic, almost too much so. You couldn't help but feel like you were the most important person in the room when he spoke to you. He greeted me with a handshake that felt more like a seal of approval than a casual greeting. "You'll fit in great here," he said, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But I brushed it off. I was just overthinking it. This was college. Everyone was trying to make a good impression. The parties were incredible. Drinks flowed freely, the music was loud, and the vibe was electric. I started to see why people loved being a part of this fraternity. It wasn't just about the parties. There was something about the atmosphere, the sense that you were in on something exclusive, something that not everyone could access. It felt like a secret society, and I was finally being let in. It wasn't until I was extended a bid that things began to feel strange. The first night after I was officially a pledge, I went to the house for a welcome to the Brotherhood party. It was just the pledges and the brothers this time. No outside guests. I'd been looking forward to it, excited to start my journey into fraternity life. But the vibe was different this time. The music was still loud, the drinks still flowing, but there was an edge to it, like everyone was a little too tense, a little too eager. I started to notice that the brothers were acting strange. They were still the same guys, but there was something in their eyes, something in the way they looked at me, like they were waiting for something, watching me, expecting something. Every time I spoke to one of them, they'd smile a little too wide or laugh a little too hard, like they were testing me. After a few hours, the party began to die down. The guests slowly filtered out, leaving just the brothers and the pledges. The house felt quieter, emptier. It was like the energy had shifted. I went to the kitchen to grab another drink and noticed a few of the brothers whispering in a corner, their voices low, hushed. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it didn't seem normal. When I looked around the house, everything felt off. The hallways were darker now. The rooms seemed further apart, like the house was stretching as I moved through it. I had to shake off the feeling, remind myself that this was just my mind playing tricks on me. Then came the first strange noise. It happened when everyone was winding down, sitting around the living room, talking in small groups. I was in the kitchen again, leaning against the counter when I heard a loud bang, followed by muffled shouting. It sounded like it came from the farthest room down the hall, a room I had never seen open before. I hesitated. I didn't want to seem nosy, but curiosity got the better of me. I walked down the hall, my steps slow, cautious. The door to the room was closed, locked. I could feel the sound of movement inside, like someone was pacing back and forth, scraping something against the walls. But when I tried the handle, it wouldn't budge. It was like the room didn't want me to open it. I stepped back, unsure of what to do. The noise stopped as suddenly as it had started, and a few moments later I heard footsteps approaching from behind me. Jason appeared at the end of the hall, his smile wide and his eyes cold. But it was the way he looked at me that made me feel like I was being watched, analyzed. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice too smooth. "Yeah, just thought I heard something," I said, trying to sound casual. Jason laughed, clapping me on the shoulder with a force that made me stumble slightly. "The house is old, man. It makes noises. You get used to it after a while." He paused, glancing back at the door. "Just don't go in there. It's off limits for a reason." I nodded, but his words stuck with me. Don't go in there. There was something about the way he said it, like it was a rule that wasn't just about the house, but something else. Something unspoken. The parties continued as usual. On the surface, everything seemed normal. But the more I spent time in the house, the more I noticed things that didn't sit right with me. The brothers always seemed to be in groups, never alone. When they talked to me, they asked questions that didn't make sense. Questions about my past, about my family, about my deepest fears. They weren't trying to get to know me. It felt like they were testing me, probing to see if I was ready for something. The locked room, the one with the strange noises, remained off limits. Every time I passed it, I could hear things. Sometimes it was shouting, sometimes it was whispers, sometimes just scratching like something was trying to get out. I asked a few of the other pledges about it, but they all gave me the same answer. "Don't worry about it, you'll find out soon enough." That was the most unsettling part of it all. They didn't seem curious about the room, didn't seem bothered by it. It was just accepted. A week before Hell Night, things took a turn. The brothers called us together, all the pledges, and gave us a rundown of what to expect during Hell Week. It wasn't anything extreme, not like some of the horror stories I had heard from other frats. But still, I felt this unease hanging in the air. It was almost like a collective tension, like everyone knew something was coming. Jason explained it casually, as though it were just another part of the process. Hell Week and Hell Night are important. It's about proving you're ready to join the Brotherhood. Don't worry. It's not going to be anything crazy. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But his smile, that tight smile, didn't make me feel reassured. It made my stomach turn. You'll do a few challenges, push yourself a little, maybe some stuff you're not expecting, he continued, almost too casually. It's all part of the tradition. Just remember to stay calm, stay focused, and don't freak out. I looked around the room at the other 15 or so remaining pledges. Some of them were grinning nervously, others just staring blankly as though they had already seen the things we'd be doing. Jason's tone had remained light, but something about the way he said "don't freak out" made my skin crawl. Later that night, the brothers gathered us for the first round of hazing. It was subtle at first. They made us do things like walk through dark hallways blindfolded, test our limits with small discomforts. But it wasn't the tasks themselves that unsettled me. It was the atmosphere in the house. The silence between the challenges. The strange way the brothers watched us, always standing in groups, never speaking to one another directly, as though communicating in ways we couldn't understand. We were told to be ready for more on Hell Night. They made it sound like a joke, nothing we couldn't handle. But the tension in the air was thick. I'm sitting in my dorm room now, trying to convince myself that it'll be fine. That Hell Night will be just like any other college tradition. Uncomfortable, maybe a little weird, but nothing dangerous. Nothing that's going to change the way I see the brothers or the house. But I know deep down that I'm lying to myself. Hell Night is coming, and I'm starting to think I'm not ready for what they have planned. Life's not exactly fair. It can go from heaven to hell in a second. Picture this. You're happily married to your best friend, you actually love your job, and you finally have saved enough money to enjoy yourself. Vivid enough? This is merely a factor in my life's equation. Well, lose said job of 13 years due to a random change in the position's requirements. Of course, this will affect your partner. Your marriage starts to fail, and your best friend becomes your biggest critic. Love morphs into resentment, and inadequacy latches onto every moment spent with her. Till death do us part becomes more of a hurdle than a bond. We married very early, reckless maybe, but what we had was real. Every little remark of "you're moving too fast" felt trivial in the face of something so powerful. The years slipped by like nothing. When you're married to your high school sweetheart, everything moves with the pace of a fairy tale. We were a cliché, a Hallmark movie somehow brought to life. Every moment with her felt natural. I didn't have to be anyone but myself. I thought we'd be together until the very end, no matter what blew our way. But even the smallest hurdle can trip you. Maybe this bitterness was growing between us all along, lying dormant until the swollen bubble of discontent popped. Oh, it popped, and it popped bad. I always loved Miranda, and I knew she loved me, but love isn't exactly absolute. At least our love wasn't. Through a daily dance of passive-aggressive remarks and hushed insults, my feelings for her grew cold and then blazing hot. The Hallmark movie was over. It was time for reality to take the stage. Truth be told, I hate my wife. I hate her shrill voice. I hate her judgmental eyes. I hate her unearned beauty. I hate her snide personality. I just simply and utterly hate her. With an empty bed and a head full of doubt, my body began rejecting basic needs. I haven't slept well since, stuck in a constant loop of waking up in the middle of the night to my own inner thoughts screaming at me. Why did you have to get married? You were happy single, and now you can't live without her. I feel sick. I feel weak. I feel ugly. I feel unhappy. Addicted to her touch like a drug, I needed to wean myself off from her poison. Well, all of a sudden, she wanted to play hero and save our marriage. Of course, she just had to be the one. She was fine with our relationship being in ruin for months. She was fine without speaking to me for most days out of the week. And she was fine with making me sleep in the guest room for a better part of a year. But she was going to save it. The hero nobody asked for. Savior of the relationship nobody wanted. Her answer for this was space, as simple as that. Space. After all that was said between us, some time apart could fix us in her mind. Either some talentless internet therapist or one of her unbearable friends gave her the idea of a separate vacation. Either or, I hardly pay attention to what she says anymore. We would detoxify and create new memories to share with each other, or some other vapid way of describing getting drunk with strangers. Whatever. I didn't care anymore. Getting a week away from her would be good for me. I threw some bags together out of spite, loaded up my car with the least amount of effort, and drove off into the distance with no direction in mind. I could see her waving in my mirrors. Though she shrunk with distance, her smile never did. Denial has taken her, trying so desperately to change our fairy tale's ending. When I finally stopped thinking of her, that's where I would stop and stay. A grueling 6 hours into the endless drive, it was well into the night, and my determination was fading. I don't know exactly where I am, but I found myself in some southern mountain town. Well, I suppose you could call a few scattered buildings a town. I don't really know what qualifies as a village versus a town. Regardless, it was rustic, to put it politely. The town sign was in horrid disrepair, faded beyond belief, and covered in thick vines. Home of Miracles, and a crude symbol was set in gold over what was left. Uncanny, sure, but I've stayed in worse. I'm not exactly a stranger to sketchy hostels. It was clean enough for a hick town, I suppose. I am a man of my word and found my mind Miranda-less for a time. Worst comes to worst, I could just camp out in my car until morning. Maybe I could actually sleep without her lurking around. Even the thought of her perfume makes me sick to my core. Driving through the empty streets, my unease was replaced by some sort of comfort. This place just felt safe. I can't exactly put it into words. I wouldn't say it was charming, but there was something about it. An allure, a breath of fresh air. It was odd, but it felt almost euphoric just to be there. Maybe I wasn't cut out for city life after all. I need a place like this. My body needs a place like this. She's killing me, and this town felt like a cure. For as small as it was, the roads were maze-like, and one wrong turn you'd be back where you started. I feel like I drove around for 15 minutes, passing the same few buildings until I found the right turn. A brightly lit sign labeled Herd's Garden Inn. Rooms available was sloppily displayed in front of an old building on the town's furthest outskirts. Could this be a hotel? It couldn't be. It looked like a church, steeple and all. An old, medium-sized church shoddily renovated into a dingy inn. That's interesting, at least. The steeple on top of the building was damaged and splintered. They must have torn off the cross. They can get rid of that, but not the vines and ivy slithering their way up the walls. For a second, an ember of doubt entered my mind yet again, only to be snuffed out by a thought of Miranda. This is the only inn in town, it seems, and on second thought, sleeping in my car would be the death of me. I will be fine. Opening my car door, I was floored by the cold night air. I didn't pack anything for this climate, so I hurried into the Herd's Garden Inn. Immediately, warm, perfumed air wrapped around me like a blanket. It was soothing, borderline intoxicating. Tacky wallpaper of a deep purple embellished in gold carelessly lined the walls with carpet the color of wine that stuck to my shoes. It was visually pleasing in its own way, though objectively hideous. A bull's skull wrapped in vines was mounted over what must have been the lobby. I will never understand Southerners. "Welcome, cold night, ain't it?" a cheerful voice called from a makeshift desk. It was a stout older man with a grin as infectious as the flu. Short, chubby, and with a balding head of frizzy red hair. This man looked like he couldn't hurt a fly. Dressed in stained and frayed clothing, he looked almost homeless. Though an oddly opulent golden bracelet bearing some sort of token shone like the sun at his wrist. "Yeah, I can barely feel my fingers," I said, forcing out a light-hearted tone through my chattering teeth. "Well, lucky for you, the garden has just what you need, a nice room and something warm to drink." The older man chuckled. Friendly, yes, but he didn't exactly look like he was on the job. "That'd be nice. So, do you work here?" I asked. That had to be the funniest thing he's heard in years, as he almost died from laughing. He had that loud, exaggerated laugh like somebody's favorite uncle. "Work here? I own it. Augie McFalls. Pleasure to meet you." He laughed, clasping my hand with both of his palms in a soft and oily handshake. The stink of alcohol and scented oils clung to his shabby clothing. My eyes began to water as the scent somehow grew stronger. "Well, nice to meet you, Mr. McFalls." "Mr. McFalls, that makes me feel old. Please call me Augie. The garden is my baby. Me and my sister Amelia really shaped this place up. Oh, it was so tragic before we got here. You should have seen it. Well, I always loved a fixer-upper." he chimed, eyeing me up like I was something miraculous and unknown. To be honest, I almost thought your sign was mistaken. It just looked so much like a... I was quickly cut off by Augie's obnoxious chuckle. A church? Keen eye, buddy. Well, it was, funnily enough. Mill Point Ministries was its name. Real shame. The pastor was a sour character and just decided to abandon it. A lot of false prophets out there. Oh, what was his name, Danny? Well, it doesn't matter. It died soon after. I couldn't help myself when I saw such a pretty little building in ruin. He droned on, gently running his hand across the patchy wallpaper. It's definitely an interesting spot. Never can say I've slept in an old church before. Well, it's been a long drive, so a room would be great. As long as you don't expect me to get up early for a sermon, I joked, only for Augie's smile to die for a second. Augie McFalls was a man who looked like he wasn't built for a frown. An unnatural, labored expression twisted his face before twitching slowly back into a smile. Augie put a clammy hand on my shoulder. You know, friend, I used to preach a bit at the Eternal Jubilee. It's a church a few miles from here. Me and its pastor, Lysander Sinclair, go way back. Long, ancient history. I was one of his first followers, in fact. Though I left the congregation over some differences, we have an arrangement of sorts. I would love to set you on the right path, though. Salvation comes at its own pace. After all, we are in the home of miracles. He smiled, gesturing to his bracelet. Lysander Sinclair, like the rock star. I thought he died of an overdose decades ago. That or beat a prostitute to death, I can't remember. I may have sounded rude, but why would Augie McFalls of Town No Name have connections to a top 40er? An especially controversial top 40er, I may add. Holy Harem was more of my dad's thing, but I've heard about the scandals. Lysander Sinclair, Rico St. Wild, Randy Rain, and Adam Swift were ousted from the spotlight. Their reputations never recovered, and before long, nobody really remembered they existed. Not sure if the rumors were true, but they should definitely stay under whatever rock they crawled under. The very same, tabloids do love their exaggeration. He's still kicking, but he prefers the seclusion of this town. I started off as his roadie back in the day. Oh, enough about me. I've taken enough of your time. You will be staying in the first room down that left hallway. Don't worry about payment. We will sort that out when you decide to leave. Feel free to stay as long as you see fit. If you'd like some warm, spiced wine, just let me know. Amelia makes it just right. I'm good for now. I try to steer clear from alcohol. Are you sure, buddy? I simply insist. One sip wouldn't hurt. We fermented ourselves, not one to brag, but you'll never taste anything better. Warm in a nice mug or straight from the bottle. Amelia's special recipe has no equal. It's like beauty in a bottle. Augie cheeped, simply astounded that someone might not want to try his mulled wine. Me and alcohol don't mix, I sternly replied, growing more impatient with every passing second. Well, friend, I just thought a vice or two never hurt anyone. Besides, it takes more than a cup to get you skunk drunk. You just look so cold. I'd hate it if you caught something. He bulked. Well, that's certainly nice of you, but it's been a long drive. The rooms have bathrooms with showers, right? I don't know how much of this place is. Well, still a church, I asked, probably smelling like absolute death from the car ride. Top of the line, we did all the renovations. The garden is my baby after all, he chuckled, proud as could be. Augie then briskly handed me a room key before returning to his desk, humming the melody of the crazy chord of the Cobra King. Like a loon claiming to have seen Elvis. He had to be crazy, right? Claiming to be close with Holy Harem's lead singer and ranting about salvation. He's harmless but crazy, I'm sure. Maybe I should leave in the morning. No. I will not go crawling back to Miranda just yet. I feel free, I feel strong, and I feel alive. I don't care if this place is odd. Hell, even if it's dangerous. I would rather die than let her win. My room was clearly once an office or classroom. Apparently, to Augie, renovating meant faded wallpaper and tacky, outdated furniture. The bathroom was merely a corner of the room, just slapped to the side. Top of the line, my ass. Beggars can't be choosers. Briskly scanning the room, I locked the door and put a chair in front of it for good measure. Crazy but harmless, I reminded myself. In that moment, I thought of Miranda again. Her beautiful hair, her silly little squeak of a laugh, her witty way of making everything a joke. I wanted to call her to see how her vacation was going. Well, fuck you, Miranda. Your ratty tangled hair, your grating cackle, and your impulsive need to tear everything down with a quick remark. She's lived rent-free in my head for far too long. A nice hot shower will take my mind off of her. I tossed my phone onto the bed and got the shower ready. The water was cold, the shower was cramped. and the transparent curtain was riddled in black mold. Closing my eyes, I started to drift deeper into the inner recesses of my mind. I needed sleep. My body felt sticky. Opening my eyes, I noticed a purplish film gathering at the drain. Stinking of a vineyard, the water pouring from the showerhead gained a reddish-purple hue. What the hell? I whispered to myself, quickly flipping the shower off. It had the strong floral stink of wine, though upon second glance the purple stains were completely gone. My body was just wet. Not a single purple drop on me. Shifting my body to avoid the showerhead, I turned it back on. Just water. My body and mind were failing me. All I could do was laugh at what I've become. When out of the corner of my eye, a tall shape could be seen through the shower curtain. I recoiled and violently ripped it from its hooks. Nothing. Like a scared child, I frantically checked under the bed and made sure the door was untouched. Just an empty room. The lack of sleep must be catching up to me. Under the dim lamplight, I saw my pale, sickly reflection in the mirror. Dark circles and heavy bags lined exhausted, bloodshot eyes. I haven't looked healthy in a while. The lamp started to flicker until a different shade of bright golden light blazed from its bulb. A strong musk of incense slithered into my room, as my body felt warm and as light as air. My form started to shift in the mirror as I was left in a drunken daze. I looked like I was 5 years younger, healthy, strong, and happy. Behind me, a tall, pale woman appeared, every inch of her radiating with sexuality. Her hair was fashioned in delicate golden vines with the most exquisite jewelry wrapping around her frame. She embraced me in a tender hug, resting her deathly pale head upon my shoulder, before revealing its face to the mirror. My God. It had Miranda's face, down to the last freckle. Yet it had no eyes. Only a golden chain connected its sunken sockets. Bear witness, it hissed through her voice before fading into nothing. The lamp flickered back into the dull white light, and I found myself staring at my gaunt reflection. A small, shimmering speck appeared in the mirror as it began to crack. It was almost like something was shoving it through the mirror. Violently shattering into 1,000 pieces of glass, the shiny object fell with an audible clink. A golden coin now rested on the dresser, engraved with a naked man and a woman holding hands. I spun around in a manic daze, arming myself with a large shard of mirror. The door was open with the chair clear across the room. Was I drugged? Did that bastard put something in the vents? This was too real to be a hallucination. Hours had passed in an instant. My phone and car keys were gone. I don't know if I can escape, but I have to try. Naked and with mirror shard in hand, I ran into the lobby. Every piece of furniture, tall and heavy, was moved in front of the door to form a makeshift wall. I wouldn't have time, even if I could move every single shelf and dresser by myself. My only option is to find another exit. Though windowless, it may have a different exit somewhere near the back. Loud, muffled music echoed deep from the main hallway. Holy harem, of course. It was Augie. If I had to kill him, so be it. Rattle, rattle, rattle in a roll. Taste your venom, baby, take control. The element of surprise may have been lost, but I quietly slinked down the hallway. I'm not the strongest man out there, but I could definitely take Augie McFalls. My best chance would be to quickly overpower him. I have reach and youth on my side. Though if he was armed, that's an entirely different story. I just have to find him. Passing several different rooms, an escape was nowhere in sight. The music was growing louder and louder until it led me to the source. A set of large double doors were slightly cracked, revealing a dim glow of light. The sanctuary. Keeping the mirror shard extended in front of me, I peered through to make sure he wasn't lurking in a dark corner. Shaking, I entered through the gates of hell. Barely lit, most of the medium-sized sanctuary was wreathed in darkness. Something awful happened here. Old weathered pews were hectically scattered all across the room. Large wooden crosses were set into the walls, littered in 1,000 nicks and hateful gashes. Under a harsh light, a golden calf was placed on the center podium. Dozens of red-purple bottles surrounded the idol like some type of offering. Dear God, I mouthed, not even being able to muster a whisper. I steadily made my way around the pulpit, with my heart falling with every creak of its derelict wood. A side door was open. It was the back room of the pulpit, fully lit, with the sound of Augie humming along with the song inside. Peeking around the doorframe, I could never forget what I saw. An older woman, thin and gray, was strapped to a chair. Sickly yet beautiful, she looked like every labored gasp may be her last. Her arms were slit, oozing a deep crimson into dishes placed under her. Stained wine bottles filled rickety shelves, each filled to the brim with darkly colored vintages. "Augst," she croaked, every sound seasoned with pain. Augie, wearing nothing but a golden wreath upon his head and a leopard pelt draped on his shoulders, gently ran his fingers through her brittle hair. She weakly recoiled against his touch, only for him to place a single finger upon her mouth. "Shh, my beloved Maynard, I only need a drop more. The bull will give you strength, as you give us strength. You are one. We are one. We knew the price," he said bitterly on the verge of tears. Grabbing a bottle, he poured a few drops of the dish's contents into the deep purple liquid. "I know you're there, friend. There's no need to be afraid. I bear you no ill will. Trust me, there is no running at this point. Come," Augie called, never turning to face me. "What the hell is this?" I sobbed through intense fits of gagging. He turned to me with glassy eyes and a forced smile. "Beauty in a bottle," he whispered. I'll kill you, you goddamn monster. I'll slit your fucking throat without a second thought." "Monster, no, just a man in debt. Miracles cost a heavy sum, and by the looks of it, you've been given an offer." Augie grimaced, flashing the razor blade concealed within his hand. What is going on?" I screamed, all hopes of escape extinguished. "Well, the bull sees beauty in all of us, but is especially drawn to the physically blessed. He thirsts for beauty and requires a chosen harvest. A harvest all of his followers may enjoy. You are not beautiful, friend. You cannot be a blessed Maynard, and thus you are in no danger by my hand. But you may partake, and as one of the coin, you will partake. You're deranged. You know I saw you in a dream. Lysander thinks he's the only one with visions. A fool, but the favorite fool. I saw a pale, sickly runt coming to my doorstep in need of help. Well, friend, the bull can help at a price. He can give you anything you desire, youth, wealth, a new wife. Hell, he can give you 1,000 wives, it doesn't matter. His power is absolute, yet you must repay your coin." It didn't feel as if I was talking to Augie McFalls, but rather evil given flesh. "What did you say?" "Your whore wife brings you nothing but suffering. The bull can give you everything." I lunged at him with the shard in hand and every intention to kill him in my heart. I was set in a murderous daze, a frenzy of tears and clumsy slashes. Every moment spent with Miranda, every laugh, every cry, every kiss was a stab aimed at his throat. His arrogance fading, Augie did his best to evade the jagged edge in a clunky panic. In a state of fight or flight, Augie responded with heavy swipes of his razor blade. Fat and awkward, Augie wasn't nearly as quick as he hoped, sustaining several cuts to his forearms. Aiming for his exposed neck, I threw myself at him with the shard's point. Stumbling to the side, Augie evaded the killing blow by slamming himself into the full shelves. Collapsing under his weight, broken glass and wine now littered the floor. I crashed into the old woman with a gruesome thud. Her eyes were weak and confused, but almost grateful. A deep red now stained my hands. The shard was lodged deep into her throat. Her icy blue eyes never left mine, gently grabbing onto my side with scrawny-bound hands. Choking on the taste of death, she tried to speak through horrid gurgling. "Leave. Do. What? I couldn't." Her grip grew weak, as her writhing slowly stopped. It was quick in her state, she couldn't muster more than a few moments of life. Augie hobbled over to her, desperately trying to cover the wound with his bare hand. Wailing like a pig, Augie rested his head on her blood-soaked chest. You have no idea what you have done," he squeaked, squeezing her hand longingly. Trembling, Augie desperately looked around the room, scanning every recess in pure terror. The music abruptly stopped. A powerful scent of incense filled the room, sweet and appalling. The adrenaline was immediately sucked from my body, turning me into a shivering mass of fear and mortality. We were not alone. The sparse lights of the sanctuary burst one by one, bathing it in true darkness. The back room's lighting began to flicker before gaining the sickening golden hue. The sound of bare feet on wood echoed out from the empty sanctuary, heavy, slow steps that rocked me to my very core. I could feel it in my spine. From the darkness of the sanctuary, a shape contorted its massive form to slide through the doorframe. It was like a Renaissance statue given flesh, tall and terrible. Its body was pale as marble, silken and smooth, yet shimmered with sickly sweet oils and gold dust. Intricately chiseled, every inch of its impressive body was teeming with muscle. Heavy rings engraved with unspeakable acts lined its massive arms, ending in cruel hands bearing gilded fingernails. It had no genitals, save for a large coin wound to its crotch by grapevines. embossed with the signet of a wailing hoplite. Between its impossibly broad shoulders, a single golden bull's horn grew from its neck, taking the place of where a head should be. Long and sharply pointed, its head horn was vulgarly engraved in a canthus vine, with gaudy incense burners dangling from its curve. Whoa, what is that? An inquisitor, reaper sevenfold of broken deals. Augie choked, turning even paler than the figure. Ripping the bracelet free from his wrist, Augie threw it at the thing's feet. Turning into a stammering puddle of tears and urine, Augie fell to his knees. I have been faithful to the bull. I have given and given and given. But I will give more, I promise. I will give tenfold, hundreds. I will find another. I just need more time. A deal can be made. A deal can always be made. Augie shrieked, groveling before the thing. You can't argue with the divine. Reaching out its hand, it caressed his cheek gently with its knuckle. With a lackadaisical flick of its wrist, the thing sent Augie flying into a wall with a deafening crunch. Its knuckles turned his face into a cave of splintered bone and bloody mush. It proceeded to tear his battered body into 7 different pieces before picking up his coin. Turning to me, it slowly walked backwards into the darkness as the light flickered back into its normal hue. I stayed there for hours, not even moving an inch, trapped in a cage of every emotion possible. No thoughts were left after that. I don't know exactly how or when, but I eventually left the sanctuary. Everything after that is a daze. I remember finding an exit, but actually getting there is a blur. Seeing the light of day gave me no relief, no happiness, nothing. My car was gone, and off in the distance, a dozen naked people were staring from the tree line. I slowly inched back into the inn. There is no escape. I failed the dying woman, I failed myself, and I failed you, Miranda. I wish it turned out differently for us. I never tried to understand what you were going through. It must have been hard. I was bitter and hurt. My ego was in ruins, and I had no idea what my future held. I guess I just expected you to swallow all of the poison I'd spew. Like a dog licking at its own wound, all I could do is wallow in my own self-hatred. You had the strength to try to fix us, and yet I abandoned it at the first wall we hit. You are stronger than me, always have been. Miranda, if you are reading this, I love you. Hi, my name is Lita. I'm 16 years old, and for the last month and a half, my sister Ellen has been sending me strange messages over text. The messages weren't too strange at first, just some dark jokes here and there. I didn't think too much about it at the time, but then they started becoming more and more common in Elon's texts. She eventually started sending news articles about people just having horrific things done to them. This is when I started becoming concerned, since I didn't think it was healthy for her to be constantly reading about messed up things, and I told her so. But she just responded with, I understand your concern, but I just find this interesting and wanted to share with you as I'm starting a true crime podcast. I was kind of weirded out by this response, but whatever, I guess. She is a stay-at-home wife and could use the extra income. This week, however, the messages started to get really out of hand as Ellen started sending videos and photos of what looks to be real videos of people being killed in horrific ways. I'm going to go into detail about what the videos and photos showed for the sake of my soul and yours. I asked Ellen why the hell is she sending me these photos and videos and why the hell she was looking at them in the first place. She just responded by saying, I don't know, why are you upset by this? After that message, she just kept sending more and more of these videos. I asked her to stop sending me this fucked up stuff. She didn't stop sending these videos. My only response from her would be voicemails of her laughing for minutes on end. I honestly thought she hated me or something, because why else would she send me these things? Not knowing what else to do, I went to my mom and told her about this. She was reasonably freaked out and tried to get a hold of my sister, but she couldn't. So she called her husband and explained the situation to him, to which his response was, "Huh, that's weird, I'll try and talk to her about it." Safe to say, after that lackluster response, my sister kept sending me those videos and photos. At this point, my mom asked me to block her as she didn't want me seeing those videos anymore. But I couldn't block my sister. I loved her. She clearly needed help, so I convinced my mom to take me to her house so we could check on her. When we got to her house, we knocked on the door, but there was no response. We waited a few minutes before knocking again, still no response. Eventually, my mom knocked on the door while saying, "Ellen, it's me, and Lita, are you home?" We waited a few more minutes and were about to go when the door opened and Ellen was there to greet us. "Hi, guys," Ellen said meekly while looking down, clearly avoiding eye contact with us. Sorry to leave you two hanging like that. Don't worry about it, Mom said, while embracing her as tightly as possible. Ellen led us inside, and we all sat down in the living room. I expected her house to be at least a little messy, but it was clean. It was so clean that the place hardly looked like it had been lived in. At the very least, I expected Ellen to look a little rough, but she looked fine and well put together as always. I think you know why we're here, darling, Mom said while fidgeting with her hands. No, I don't, Ellen responded, looking genuinely confused. The videos and photos you've been sending me, Ellen. I blurted out. What videos? Ellen looked even more confused. The videos of those awful things happening to people. Ellen laughed when I said that. Have you been watching too many scary movies, Lita? Her voice darkened when she said that. Mom chimed in, stopping Ellen from derailing the conversation. Ellen, we're all very worried about you and we love you, but something here isn't right. You shouldn't looking, let alone sending those videos to your sister. I have no idea what you're talking about. Ellen looked even more puzzled than before. I pulled out my phone and went to our text conversation and showed her what she'd sent me. You honestly don't know what I'm talking about, I said, harsher than I meant to. Helen's face went pale as she scrolled through the messages. And no, I swear to God I didn't send these to you, my God. I wouldn't even look at this stuff myself. Ellen paused for a moment before continuing. Lita, I don't know who sent you this, but I swear it wasn't me. What do you mean, was phone number hacked or something? Mom asked with hopeful relief in her eyes. I guess my number was hacked and I somehow didn't know. My God, I'm sorry that you had to see all that, Lita. If I'd only known sooner. Ellen, it's okay, it's not your fault, I said as a wave of relief came over me. Mom, Ellen, and I hugged it out, and Ellen changed her phone number. We stayed for a little longer to make sure Ellen was all right. But while on the drive home, I couldn't help but think about the many inconsistencies in my sister's story of being hacked. Why didn't she hear about what was happening from her husband after my mom called him? Wouldn't she have gotten my messages of me asking her why she was sending me all these horrific things? And did those voicemails of laughing sound exactly like her? I pushed these thoughts away for the past few days, as once Ellen changed her phone number, I wasn't sent another awful video or photo. Well, that is until yesterday when I was sent the message on Ellen's new phone number, "You can't stop me." Under the message was at least a dozen photos and videos of the most depraved things you can think of. Again, I don't want to say what these photos and videos showed for the sake of my soul and your soul. I don't know how I'm to stop this or if Ellen is really behind this, but I'll keep all of you updated. If you have any questions, leave in the comments and I'll try to respond to them. For some context, when I was a kid, my grandmother always told me to avoid staircases at night. "They're bridges between worlds," she'd say, her voice low and grave, as if she knew something no one else did. "When it's dark and the house is quiet, the stairs aren't yours anymore, they belong to something else." I laughed it off like any kid would. But when she passed and I inherited her old creaking house, I stopped laughing. The stairs in her home always felt strange. Too steep, too narrow, the wood slick under my feet as though it wanted me to slip. After I sold that house, I swore I'd never live in another old place. But when Lily showed me the Victorian on Elmwood Drive, I felt that old unease creep back up my spine. "It's perfect," she said, spinning in the foyer. Her smile was so wide, so full of hope, that I couldn't say no. The house loomed around us, its tall ceilings casting long, jagged shadows that moved even when nothing else did. Dust hung in the air like a fog, and the wallpaper peeled in long, curling strips, revealing the splintered bones of the walls beneath. But it was the staircase that held me captive. It coiled up from the center of the house, an imposing spiral carved from some dark, oily wood. Its banister was smooth, gleaming unnaturally in the dim light, and the steps were impossibly deep, as if they'd been built for something larger than humans. When I stared at it too long, my vision blurred, and the staircase seemed to twist, the angles wrong, the shadows pooling in ways they shouldn't. I felt it then. A pressure, subtle but undeniable, like the house itself was aware of me. Watching. "It's just a staircase," Lily said when I mentioned how unsettling it was. But even she couldn't hide the way her voice wavered, just a little, when she touched the banister. The first few nights were quiet, save for the usual creaks of an old house settling. Lily and I busied ourselves with cleaning and unpacking, but every time I passed the stairs, I felt their weight, their pull. It wasn't just their presence. It was the way they seemed to demand attention, to want something from me. The first time I heard the footsteps, I told myself it was Lily. It was after midnight, and I'd been lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. The sound was faint at first, a soft creak, then a pause, then another creak. The pattern was too deliberate, too steady to be random. I got up, my heart pounding, and stepped into the hallway. The stairs were empty. "Lily?" I whispered, my voice cracking. No answer. Just the oppressive silence of the house and the faint scent of wood polish that had started to cling to everything. I checked every room, but Lily was fast asleep in bed. The next morning I found something that made my stomach turn. On the first step was a faint impression. A footprint, but it wasn't mine or Lily's. It was long, inhumanly so, with too many toes that splayed outward like tree roots. The wood beneath it was warped, the grain rippling outward as though the step had softened under the weight of whatever had stood there. When I showed Lily, she laughed nervously. "It's just an old house," she said. "The wood's probably warped from moisture or something." But that night, she stared at the staircase longer than usual, her fingers grazing the banister. The noises grew worse. What started as faint creaks became loud, deliberate thuds, like something heavy dragging itself up the stairs. And then came the whispers. Low and guttural, words I couldn't understand but felt deep in my chest like vibrations reverberating through my ribs. And then there were the dreams. In them I was always at the base of the stairs, unable to move. The wood was no longer wood but flesh, pulsating and veined, slick with something dark and wet. Faces swirled in the banister, their mouths opening and closing as they whispered to me in languages that twisted my mind. At the top of the stairs was a figure, tall and angular, its body wrong, too many joints bending the wrong way. Its eyes were deep pits of swirling black, and its grin stretched impossibly wide, splitting its face in two. When I woke, I could still feel the weight of its gaze. I thought it couldn't get worse. But then Lily changed. I found her one night standing on the stairs, her back to me. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her neck twisted just slightly too far. "Lily?" I called. She turned slowly, her movements jerky, like a marionette being pulled by invisible strings. Her face was hollow, her skin sagging as though it no longer fit her bones. Her eyes were black voids, and her lips were cracked and bleeding, stretched into a smile that wasn't hers. "They're beautiful," she whispered, her voice rasping like dry leaves. "What are?" I managed to choke out. "The stairs," she said. "They've been waiting for us." I tried to run that night, but the house wouldn't let me. Every door led back to the base of the staircase, its steps glistening wet and raw, the faces in the wood grinning at me with too many teeth. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They weren't words anymore, but emotions, sensations, fear, hunger, longing. I fought for days, maybe weeks, refusing to climb those steps. But the house wore me down. The air grew heavier, suffocating until it felt like my lungs were filled with tar. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe without feeling the pull of the stairs. Last night I stopped fighting. As I stepped onto the first step, the wood shifted beneath my feet, soft and warm like flesh. The faces in the banister writhed, their mouths stretching open in silent screams. With each step my body felt lighter, less solid, as though the house was peeling me away from myself. My skin tingled, then burned, then softened, sinking into the stairs as if I were melting into them. By the time I reached the top, I was no longer myself. My arms had twisted, bending in impossible ways, my fingers merging into long, spindly appendages. My skin pulsed with the rhythm of the house, veins spreading like roots into the floor. And then I saw Lily. She was waiting for me, her body fused with the staircase, her face stretched across the banister, smiling. Her voice echoed in my mind, soft and sweet. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" And for the first time I understood. The house doesn't take you. It welcomes you. As I'm making this public, I suppose I should probably let you all know who I am. The residents here call me a lot of things, some not so pleasant, but I won't share those. My name is Alexander, but I honestly don't really mind what you call me if you need to call me anything at all. I work as the manager of an apartment complex. It's nothing really that interesting. A lot of paperwork and a lot of sitting around doing nothing until a resident needs me, or I need to handle a problem of some kind. One of the perks is that I have my own apartment here, rent-free, so I get to save some cash at least. They're lenient with pets too, so I was able to bring my cat Soot. She's a sweetheart. There is an odd thing about where I work though, something that I can't really explain how it works, but it just does. Where I work both exists and doesn't exist, like some strange in-between state. Cryptic, I know, but let me try and explain it a little more. Normal mail can show up here and be sent from here just fine, as long as it's properly postmarked and such. Sometimes the occasional letter or package gets lost, but that's not my problem. However, if you try giving out the address to someone, it can't be found. GPS of any kind can't pick up where we are, and even if you give verbal directions, you practically need to hold someone's hand to come and find this place. And honestly, God help you if you order food to come right to your apartment. I've had to guide so many delivery people to apartments that it's become a routine answer for me on the phone to say, "All right, what time is your food coming down the street?" I wouldn't suggest trying to come and find this place. You'll most likely drive yourself mad. Unless you're looking to move in here, then I'll offer assistance to finding this location. I just hope you don't mind having some pretty odd neighbors. As for how I ended up being the manager of this place, I really just needed a job, and I wanted something that wasn't retail or food service. I'd been there, done that, and honestly, I'll never go back to that. I saw an ad online about a complex needing a new manager, and having some managerial experience, I put in for it. Had the interview, went normal enough, and got the job within 2 weeks. I didn't know anything was wrong with this place when I got the job. It only started being noticeable when people were saying they legitimately couldn't find this place, even showing that it didn't appear at all on Google Maps. Where it was supposed to be was just empty, or the image would be corrupted. Then when I started actually meeting the residents, I began to understand a bit more, but I'll get into that on another day. The job pays well, I get a rent-free place to stay, I get to keep my cat, so I don't really have room to complain. I'll share noteworthy things as they happen though. Maybe it'll give me something to do during my downtime. I know I spoke about the weird behavior of the apartment complex, but I didn't really say much about the residents themselves. I can't really give away resident information, but what I can do is give some vague ideas on what it is I mean by calling them strange. First of all, I want to say that people do live here. What I mean is people, normal people, human people. At least some of the residents are human people. I saw someone comment about the complex not being the best for people who have disabilities, but that's why for all residents I give them my personal cell phone number, so if they can't reach me at the desk, they can reach me directly. I've picked up food deliveries and stood outside on the sidewalk as a living beacon for taxis and Ubers. The complex has elevators too, and some pretty decent accommodations, so for those of you worried about your fellow humans, I've got you covered. A decent amount of the residents, though, maybe even a majority, are not human. They can look human, they can walk and talk and behave like humans do, but they are not human. For example, one of the residents here looks perfectly human. Just think of what a human looks like, and yeah, that's what they look like. The only difference between this resident and the rest of us is that they have the same head-turning capability as an owl. If you've seen the way an owl can turn their head a full 180 or even 270, this resident can do that without any problems whatsoever. Another resident has a constantly changing eye color. What I mean by that is that every single time this resident blinks, their eyes are a completely different color. I've seen their eyes cycle from brown to green to blue to red before, all during the course of a single conversation. I genuinely don't know if they control what color or if it's entirely random. Never thought to ask. Those are just the ones who look human but have small quirks. That's not even covering the residents that actually need to put effort into appearing human. I've got residents with wings, tails, fangs, multiple eyes, multiple mouths, horns, unnatural skin colors, and some that can do straight-up body horror level of creepy things. Climbs walls, got a resident like that. A living voodoo doll, got a resident like that too. Shapeshifter. I've had so many I can't even keep track. If you think of a non-human sentient entity type, chances are I've rented out a suite to someone like them before. They're mostly civil, but just like humans, you got the Karens and the Chads and the Kyles. You know, the type of people that like to just be a complete nuisance with no regard for other people. Anyway, yeah, the complex is home to people from all over, even people you never thought could exist. I've got stories to tell about my time here so far, so don't worry, this won't be the last you hear from me. Now, if you'll excuse me, 429 needs me to fix their window for the 20th time. I've gone over the way the building itself is weird, and how the residents themselves are strange, but I didn't touch on the pets that these residents have. You already know that this place is lenient with pets, but when I say pets, I bet you think of the typical birds, cats, dogs, snakes, hamsters, etc., right? Well, just like how most of the residents are inhuman, several of the pets that we house here are also weird. Now don't get me wrong, even some of the non-human residents enjoy the same pets we do, but there are also pets that aren't anything you've seen before. One resident has something that looks like a cat, but it's covered in glowing fungus and has 3 eyes. Its name is Findle, and honestly, it's actually pretty sweet. You just need to be careful when petting it. I want to say it's roughly the size of a full-grown hen. I've actually been talking with this resident about setting up a possible play date between Findle and Soot one day. We're still working out the details. Another resident, the one with the color-changing eyes, has a bird-like pet named Gentoo. It looks like a mix between an African gray parrot and a peacock, and it has an extra eye on its throat. It's pretty timid around new people, and even though the resident has lived here for about a year, only last week did Gentoo let me get anywhere close to the cage. The resident did reassure me that it took them about 1.5 years to get Gentoo to this point, so it's a slow process. Some other pets include multi-headed, limbed animals of various types, pets that can turn into pure liquid at will, and even ones that don't match anything that you've ever seen before. For example, there's this one tenant who has a pet that's literally a pile of ashes, but it can shuffle around and eat on its own. I've seen it myself. Weird stuff, but still allowed since the resident takes care of it. So yeah, if you want to move here but are worried about whether or not we'd allow you to keep your pet, I can assure you that we will as long as you actually take care of the thing. Had to evict a resident once that refused to clean up after their slime. Almost lost an eye over that argument. Just take care of your pet and you'll be fine. Speaking of that, you have no idea how much of a pain it was to try and find a way to allow people to have specific pets that won't cause deposit-losing damage. We can't do the usual rules like you see at other apartments because of the wide variety of pets that we can get here. I have been able to optimize the application form to have pretty broad categories of pet, so I can find the right lease type. But even then, you have people that'll lie about what pet they have or sneak in a pet after they've already signed the lease, and that is its own headache. I tend to think of myself as a pretty easygoing person, but even I have my limits, and making my job harder for no reason is pretty up there, and don't even get me started on trying to repair apartments after someone moves out and their pet has trashed it. Do you know how difficult it is to find a cleaning and repair company that won't ask questions about what caused the damage? Funnily enough, that's how I ended up delving down the rabbit holes of non-human-owned companies, but they're super finicky to deal with, so I tend to just try my best to make up excuses for the human-owned ones. Overall, I don't care if someone has a cat, dog, snake, slime, lava snail, whatever it is as a pet, as long as they take care of it properly and don't cause massive damage to their apartment. Hell, if you're not even from this city, I'll help you look for shops that sell supplies for your otherworldly companion, because I've heard from other residents how much of a pain it can be. I've seen enough by now to give good tips and locations after all. That's all for now, I guess. I need to search the lease forms for a deposit plan that works for a large ink gecko. I think that would fall under the liquid category. I've always hated the night, particularly the last moments of consciousness before I fall asleep. I know it's completely ridiculous for a grown man to be afraid of the dark, but I hate the way the shadows grow and shrink as though they have minds of their own, broken only by the slivers of light that make their way between the gaps and the blinders over my window. I hate how the darkness gives my mind the power to materialize its cowardice, and just like that, the pile of clothes strewn across my chair is Leviathan upon his throne. But that's not really it, is it? Do you want to know the real problem with the dark? The dark makes my eyesight too good. So good that I can see things that aren't visible in the light. To be honest with you, I think I hate the dark because I feel as though it's the only time that I can see what the world really looks like, and what a terrifying place that must be. I pondered on this as I lay in my bed at 3 a.m., the devil sitting in my chair as usual and the dead woman that haunted my apartment staring at me from the corner of the room, as usual. Did I tell you there's a woman in my apartment? Sorry, must have slipped my mind, so let me go back a bit. The year is 2021, shortly after COVID restrictions had ended, and I was in my last few years of med school, looking forward to my life on the front line of healthcare, being the real-life hero I've always wanted to be. That was until something happened. No, I did something. One day I was driving my wife Sarah from her salon appointment when my phone began to vibrate in the center console. A call from my best friend Jared, and I swear I only looked for a second. But the next thing I knew, my car was airborne. I'd smashed into the edge of a turnpike, immediately flipping the vehicle over. The actual event lasted only a few seconds, but the feeling must have been hours. The doors caved in and windows shattered in patterns that were almost beautiful. I saw my wife's freshly cut and washed hair twist and spin in the wind as we rolled around at terminal velocity, all of which ended in an abrupt stop when we crashed into a tree. I sat in my seat, being held in place only by my seatbelt, staring in horror and confusion at the empty passenger seat from which my wife, who was not so prepared, had been ejected and now lay sprawled on the roadside. After what seemed like hours, the paramedics arrived, and what I imagine was a first-timer attempted CPR for much longer than was necessary, until an older, more experienced medic placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, signaling him to stop. Ultimately, she was pronounced dead on the scene. Now I am haunted, not just mentally, but by a presence slowly manifesting in my home. I didn't notice her the first few months. She was nothing more than a peripheral vision, something I only saw when I walked past mirrors or turned around too quickly. But soon it became inexplicable, and beyond that, inexcusable. Her presence was most pronounced in the moments before I fell asleep, breathing in my ear and caressing my hair in the same loving way she did when she was alive. I never believed in ghosts. Being the man of science I was, it was ridiculous to think that anything exists once bodily functions cease, but here we are. After the accident, I stopped leaving the house altogether, subsisting exclusively on a diet of ramen noodles and Doritos, only leaving my trash-filled apartment to collect my weekly ration. I imagine I'd flunked out of med school by then, I don't know. I stopped checking my emails as they were full of obligatory condolences from people I hadn't spoken to in years. I was a mess. So when I started seeing her appear in my apartment in some weird way, I was actually glad for the company. She never spoke to me outside of a staticky voice in the phone, but her presence made me strangely grateful to be alive and reminded me that she would hate to see me this way. Fast forward to the present day. It's been 3 years since the accident, and the ghostly apparitions had since stopped as my life began to return to some form of normality. I had re-enrolled in school and started my internship at the local hospital, and that was where I met her. Emily, one of the nurses at the hospital. She had long brown hair and rolling hips that made you want to watch her walk away. Things started off innocently enough. Little glances from across the hall and polite conversation in the elevator. But soon I found myself hoping I'd run into her on my rotations, which is exactly what happened. In fact, much to my surprise, these run-ins magically became more frequent, almost as though we were subconsciously looking for each other. "How are you today?" she said sweetly. "Much better now," I said in my head and accidentally out loud. She giggled and left the elevator. Soon enough, I found myself complimenting her appearance. Compliments turned to flirting, which turned to making out in unoccupied rooms, and before I knew it, I had a girlfriend. I wasn't sure I was ready for a relationship, but the way her eyes lit up and her voice lilted when she spoke to me was far too convincing to pass up. I wanted to take things slow, though, so whenever things got too hot and heavy, I would always, much to her annoyance, put a stop to it. I hadn't had sex since my wife died, and until I met Emily, I wasn't even sure I wanted it anymore. This continued for about a month until I felt ready, and so one day when we were both off shift, I invited her over to my apartment. She had never been to my place before, so I spent all day cleaning and getting it ready. Up until that point, I hadn't had the heart to take down the pictures of my wife, but I knew it was time to let go, and so with great pain, I removed each picture from the wall, placing them in a shoebox that I then put in my closet. Emily came over at about 5:45. She wore a blue dress with floral print and greeted me with a kiss at the door. Our dinner was full of laughter and lighthearted conversation, something I hadn't had in a while. After which we sat on the couch with a bottle of wine. We both knew what was up, so as soon as we touched the seat, we began kissing like horny teenagers excited for their first time. The sex was passionate and better than either of us could have imagined. We lay naked, cuddling on the couch, post-coital bliss engulfing us. But for some reason I felt watched, like there were eyes burning themselves into the back of my head, judging me, contemptuous. This continued the next few times she came over, and things only got stranger. Lights flickered and doors slammed. It felt as though every time she touched me, the house would protest in some way, and it wasn't just when Emily was around anymore. I began seeing Sarah again, but this time it was different. She wasn't just a flash in my periphery. She had become a permanent fixture in my apartment, appearing every time I turned off the lights or looked in the mirror, and now she seemed angry. Her face was in a permanent scowl, and her empty eyes followed me around the room. I never mentioned any of this to Emily. I figured I should wait at least a few months before I start sounding batshit crazy, but one night it all came to a head. Emily lay in bed next to me, soft breaths leaving her mouth as she slept, but sleep did not find me that easily. Instead, I stared at my dead wife as she stared back. And then she did something she had never done before. She began to approach the bed with silent footsteps, and in the blink of an eye she was on top of Emily, with both of her pale hands around her neck. Her eyes shot open with fear and confusion as Sarah strangled her. I attempted to free Emily, but her grip was ironclad. All I could do was beg and protest as I watched the life leave my girlfriend with wheezes and gasps, and just as it had started, it was over. Emily's hands stopped clawing at Sarah, and her arms fell limply to her sides. She was dead. Sarah's grip loosened, and she turned her attention to me, speaking for the first time since her death. Two simple words that would haunt me forever: "You're mine." No one ever wants to wake up in the trunk of a car. I don't realize that's where I am. Not at first. At first, I feel my body being jostled, my legs and shoulders bumping into a hard floor. It's the smell, really, that tells me where I am. Scratchy carpet with a rubber smell like tires in a hardware store, beneath the unmistakable reek of bodies that have been here before me. A fetid mix of blood and piss and sweat and fear. I wince because I recognize that smell too. I wish I didn't. I wish I was anywhere else. Anywhere but here. No one wants to wake up in the trunk of a car. I try piecing together how this happened, as my body bounces and cracks with every bump in the road. It was my turn to bring dinner to my weekly support group, and I was under a lot of pressure to make it good. Of all the members of our group, I'm the most obsessed with food, the most enraptured by the pleasure of eating beyond simple nourishment and survival. Because of this, I need the most help controlling my appetite and making healthier choices. Tonight, the city streets were bustling, ripe with possible meal options, as they usually were at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. All around me, couples stopped for nightcaps amid rowdy pub crawlers. Businessmen downed whiskey in their suits. Women in low-cut tops let loose while their kids slept at home with the sitter. Then there was me, alone. I didn't have to try hard to blend in. Almost no one noticed my mousy brown hair, my slight frame, my beige peacoat. I'm pretty, but not in a way that draws attention, and yet somehow I attract his. I notice him behind me a few blocks after I leave my support group in search of food. He looks like the kind of guy a woman avoids. Dark winter cap pulled down over his ears, prominent stubble on his cheeks, his hands buried in the pockets of a dark jacket zipped up to his chin, intense, menacing eyes that might have been attractive in one of those smutty novels that romanticize danger, but actually were dangerous to a woman out alone at night. The skin on the back of my neck prickles. He's getting closer. I can sense his presence creeping up on me. I hope I'm imagining it, so I decide to test it. He's followed me across 3 blocks, keeping just enough distance in the throngs of pedestrians that I can't be sure it's me he's after. So on the 4th block, I see a break in traffic and step off the curb in the middle of the block and hurry to the other side. He does the same, skittering through traffic that approaches from both directions. I'm already across when the horns start blaring at him, and for a moment, when I dare to look him in the face, our eyes catch, and I feel my guts twist, because now he knows that I know he's following me, and this knowledge doesn't deter him. If anything, he picks up speed. My heart leaps up my chest and chills descend the entire length of my spine, and that's when I look to my left and see it. A car with a UBER sticker. The driver waves me into his car. I don't dwell on his error, mistaking me for his fare. I just open the back door and slip inside, locking it behind me. Uber driver, are you okay? A strong whiff of Old Spice collects in my throat. I peer out my window down the block, but I don't see my pursuer. It's as if he's blended into the crowd or slipped into a building or alley. Woman, breathless. I think so. I think I was being followed. Uber driver. I saw that too. Woman. What? You saw? Uber driver. That's why I waved you into my car. Let's get you out of here. I thank the driver profusely, and he waves it away like it's nothing. like he hasn't just saved a life, then hands me a bottle of water because I must be thirsty, and I am. He has no idea how much. I drink. The last thing I remember is thinking that it's strange that he doesn't ask me where I want to go. He just drives. I'm about to say something and then I wake up here, in the trunk. My stomach growls. It's a strange thing to notice at a time like this, but I had been scouting dinner before my capture, and the hunger pangs give me something else to focus on to stay calm so I can assess the situation. I swallow a few deep breaths of sour air, the stench of other bodies coating my tongue in a sickly sheen. I wonder how many others ended up in that trunk before me. I can move all of my limbs, so I haven't been bound. And because I can move my limbs, I know that the trunk is empty. There are so many bumps in the road, and it's so quiet beyond the walls of the trunk that I figure us for somewhere in the country. Somewhere isolated. I haven't eaten in days. I had been saving myself for the meal I was to share with my support group, and now the hunger in my guts is raw, visceral. I shouldn't be thinking about that as much as I am, but I can't help it. It's why I never miss a meeting. I don't know how long we've been driving. I reach into my pocket, but my phone is gone, so I have no idea what time it is and no way to call for help. For a moment, I panic and force a few more sour breaths down my gullet. I need to make a plan. This isn't one of those trunks with a safety latch inside it. I won't be getting out of here on my own. After what might have been a few minutes or an hour, the car slows. I feel a hard turn to the left. Then the car creeps along down a heavily potted road. A few minutes later, the car stops and the engine quiets. I hear the opening and shutting of a car door and muffled voices. Uber driver. This one was almost too easy. It sounds like the Uber driver, but I can't be sure. The other voice is one I don't recognize at all. Stalker. It can never be too easy. Uber driver. Takes some of the fun out of it, doesn't it? Stalker. Just get her out of the car, man. Uber driver. Is everything ready? Stalker. Of course it's ready. What do you think I've been doing out here, freezing my nuts off? Uber driver. All right. She should still be out for another hour or two. Stalker. Not like it matters. It's not like anyone will hear her scream. For a moment, my blood runs slow and cold. I've clearly stumbled into something terrible, and it's getting worse by the minute. I need a plan, but I still don't have one. Then I realize that if they still think I'm unconscious, it's probably why they didn't bother tying me up. I can use this to my advantage until I see a way out. I try to steady my breathing, even though my body hums with a horrifying cocktail of fear and anticipation. I hear footsteps approaching the trunk, the click of the latch. I will my body to be still, my heart to slow, my eyes to remain heavy and closed. I feel the cold night air kiss my skin as a man leans down in a plume of Old Spice and forces his hands underneath my body to lift me from the trunk. I'm aware of things now I hadn't noticed in my brief exchange with the Uber driver before he poisoned me. His skin is dry, his rough hands scraping along my clothes. He has trouble breathing, huffing and puffing as he pulls me free. His stomach is so rotund, he braces me on it to carry me away from the trunk. Stalker. You got her? I know without opening my eyes that it is the man who stalked me down the road, the one with the jacket zipped up to his chin and hat pulled down over his ears. Stalker. Don't drop her, man. Uber driver huffs. I'm not going to drop her. This one's heavier than she looks. This one. Confirmation of what I already knew, that I'm not the first person to be abducted, the first to be driven out to wherever we are. I hear forest sounds now, like the swaying of tree branches in the wind and the skittering of squirrels in the brush. I know we're in the woods without having to see the press of trees around us. I smell sap and bark and damp moss and hear the crunch of pine needles under the feet of the men who are bringing me somewhere deeper, somewhere hidden. How many women have they brought here before me? How many times have they gotten away with whatever it is they are planning to do to me? The thought turns my already fragile stomach. My empty stomach. I really shouldn't be thinking about food right now. It seems so silly, this obsession, this need. What would the others in my support group say? They'd remind me there was a time and a place for everything, and this was not the time or the place. I should be thinking about the horrors that lie ahead, and instead my mouth is watering at the thought of my next meal. My throat painfully dry because it's been so long. Too long, really. Even the staunchest members of the group couldn't fault me for it this time. Still, I can hear them muttering our mantra. You are what you eat. You are what you eat. It's supposed to remind us to take care with our food choices. Last week's dinner was lean, barely feeding the whole group. It encouraged us to chew slowly, savor every morsel, and allow satiation to settle in before going back for more. Tonight I was supposed to find something of similar quality, steering clear of the fatty, artery-clogging fare that most of us, especially me, crave so dearly. Unfortunately for them, I'll be bringing back an overweight Uber driver and his skinny sidekick. I silently apologize to the group in my mind. They won't be pleased, but they'll be so hungry by the time I get back that they'll eat any old thing I drop in front of them. I slowly slide my hand up the Uber driver's neck. He jumps and almost drops me. When he tries calling out, I'm already sinking my teeth into the flesh on the other side of his neck. There's a lot of meat and fat to get through to reach his artery, but my canines eventually pierce it. I barely get a draw of his hot, oily blood when he screams and tries throwing me from his arms. I fall away, taking a chunk of his neck with me. I grind my teeth through the gummy, fatty mess in my mouth. It's slimy and gooey and unctuous. Everything last week's girl with the mousy brown hair and 110-pound body wasn't. More importantly, it's enough to start the change. The Uber driver clutches the hole in his neck. Blood squirts through his pudgy fingers. Stout little sausages that appear at the ends of my right and left hands before my palms expand to fit the girth of this new form. The other man, who I've almost forgotten about while my body started morphing, watches with wide eyes and a slack jaw, frozen in fear. Sometimes they do that. Sometimes the process of change is too much for them to take. There aren't usually witnesses like this, though, either. I'm a foot taller suddenly, and my waist is filling out to match the girth of the Uber driver when the other man starts stumbling through the woods away from me. This is the one time I will have trouble chasing him. It's unbelievably hard to run when I'm not used to this form yet, and when my legs and feet are growing with every step, straining against the women's pants and size 7 shoes I'm currently wearing. I kick off the shoes and see the Uber driver's toes are fat and hairy, much like the rest of him. His ankles almost non-existent with calves like stumps connecting to his feet. I plod after the other man. He's screaming, but it's not like anyone will hear him. He's made sure of that. I whip off the trench coat before the Uber driver's arms burst its seams and shed the pants as well, until I'm nearly naked as I chase down the other man. He stumbles and lands on his face, and doesn't have time to get up before my puffy, bubbling mass of dry and cracking skin catches up to him. I see what he's tripped over. A round metal door built into the ground. A secret hatch. I know without having to see what's down there that this is where they were taking me. This is where they have taken others they think are small and weak, like the woman's body I wore here tonight. To a pit in the middle of the woods, it's perfect. The man stares up at me and begs for his life. I think of the others who have begged him for the same. I should be disgusted, and I am. I don't appreciate this kind of monster. But mostly I'm grateful because my group has been looking for a new place to meet. Somewhere safe and quiet, like a pit in the ground in the middle of the woods. I yank the man up by his neck. I imagine I'm quite a sight. By now, I am fully in my new form. I have the Uber driver's bushy eyebrows, balding head, big purplish lips, and a giant belly stretching the tiny t-shirt I had already been wearing. Going for the artery, the concentrated blood there usually does the trick. Knowing where to bite first and how much to take is what allows our group, all 5 of us, to share one body, one meal at a time. The group won't be pleased when they see what I brought them, what we will all become for the next 6 days. But they might forgive me when I show them the pit in the ground in the middle of a forest. They might even congratulate me for finding us next week's meal. The skinny man with the stubble on his chin and eyes that beg for his own life rather than threaten mine. He'll be a healthier option to get us back on track after we gorge ourselves on the fat man bleeding out behind me. After all, we really are what we eat. When I moved into my new apartment, I thought it was going to be a fresh start, a chance to put the past behind me. The building was old but charming, with high ceilings, crown molding, and just enough of a retro vibe to make it feel unique. But the best part? My neighbor. Her name was Emily. I didn't meet her until the second day when she knocked on my door to welcome me to the building. She was stunning. Short dark hair, big hazel eyes, and a smile that could light up the dingy hallway. She offered me cookies she'd baked and joked about the quirks of the building. "I hope you don't mind thin walls," she said, laughing. "You'll probably hear everything." I assured her I didn't mind, but that night, lying in bed, her words echoed in my head. thin walls. At first it wasn't so bad. I'd hear her moving around, sometimes laughing on the phone or playing music. She had a soft voice, melodic, and I found it comforting, harmless. But soon I noticed something strange. It started with a low tapping noise, rhythmic and deliberate, coming from the wall between our apartments. It wasn't random, like someone accidentally bumping into the wall. No, this was purposeful, almost as if it was meant for me. At first I assumed it was Emily, maybe hanging up pictures or moving furniture. But when I saw her the next day, she didn't mention it. She smiled warmly and asked how I was settling in, and I didn't bring it up. The tapping continued that night, louder, closer. After a week, it wasn't just tapping. There were whispers, faint but distinct, bleeding through the wall. I couldn't make out the words, but they were there. A constant murmur beneath the sounds of the apartment. It made my skin crawl. I tried knocking on the wall, hoping she'd stop. The whispers went silent for a moment, and then softly, almost playfully, came 3 knocks in response. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I was determined to figure out what was going on. I pressed my ear to the wall, listening. At first, all I heard was the faint hum of Emily's music. But then something shifted. It wasn't her voice I heard. It was deeper, rougher, and it didn't sound human. I jerked back, heart pounding. What the hell was she doing in there? That evening, I tried to confront her. I knocked on her door, rehearsing what I'd say. But when she answered, she looked so calm, so normal. "Hey," she said, tilting her head. "What's up?" The words caught in my throat. Nothing. Just wanted to say hi." She smiled again, and I walked back to my apartment feeling like an idiot. The wall grew worse after that. The tapping became a scratching sound, like nails dragging across wood. I swore I could feel vibrations through the plaster, as if something was clawing its way through. The whispers turned into moans, guttural and wet, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. One night I couldn't take it. I started pounding on the wall, yelling for her to stop. And then I heard it. A voice. Clear and unmistakable. "Please stop." It was her voice, Emily's voice, but it wasn't coming from the other side of the wall, it was coming from inside it. Panic set in. I tore at the wall, ripping off chunks of plaster with my bare hands. My nails cracked and bled, but I didn't care. I had to find her, I had to save her. As I dug deeper, the smell hit me. Rotting flesh, damp earth. The wall felt alive under my hands, pulsing and warm. I gagged, but I kept going, convinced I was close. Then I saw it. A pale, lifeless hand jutted out from the wall, the fingers curled as if in agony. I screamed and stumbled back, my mind racing. How long had she been in there? How had I not noticed? And then I heard it again. "Please stop." But this time it wasn't from the wall, it was behind me. I spun around and there she was. Emily standing in the doorway, her eyes wide with terror. "What are you doing?" she whispered, clutching her phone. I'm calling the police." I looked back at the wall, at the hand. It was gone. The hole I'd torn was empty, the plaster smooth as if untouched. "Emily, no," I stammered. "You don't understand. There's something in the wall." She took a step back, tears streaming down her face. "You've been watching me, haven't you? You're the one leaving notes under my door. Scratching at the wall. You're sick." The realization hit me like a freight train. It wasn't the wall. It wasn't her. It was me. The truth unraveled in my mind like a fraying thread. The notes, the noises, the nights I'd spent pressing my ear to the wall, whispering to myself, imagining she could hear me. The obsession I'd convinced myself was harmless. I was in that wall. Emily's voice broke through my spiral. "Stay away from me," she said, backing into the hallway. And as I stood there, staring at the hole I'd clawed into my own wall, I finally understood. The thing I'd been hearing, the presence I'd been so afraid of, it wasn't trying to hurt me. It was trying to warn her. I didn't resist when the police arrived. There was nothing left to deny. But even now, as I sit in this cell, staring at the cracked cinder-block walls, I can't escape the feeling. The scratching has started again. When I was a kid, I saw my father's suicide. I know heavy way to start this, but I don't have a lot of time and I cannot dance around the facts. It happened right in front of me. One minute he was holding a gun, staring at me with this empty look in his eyes. The next he was gone. I can still hear the sound, smell the gunpowder. See the way the room changed, especially the wallpaper behind where he sat. That moment is burned into my memory. The kind of thing you can't unsee, no matter how much therapy you pay for. Speaking of my therapist, she said I'd carry that trauma forever. She was right, but she also said it would get better with time. Well, the thing is, no one ever tells you it could actually get worse with time. So far it has. Why am I writing this now? Well, there have been some terrifying things happening to me these past few days. But let's back up a bit first so you have the entire context for the story. About a year ago, my mom passed away. We hadn't spoken in years. After my cancer diagnosis when I was younger, I'd gone into remission, moved out, and cut ties with her completely. She often used my cancer to make people feel sorry for her. She was a horrible mother. There was just too much baggage there, too much pain in that house. Then, out of nowhere, I got a letter from a lawyer telling me she'd left me the deed to her house. The house where I grew up. The house where my dad died. Where my mom would often swap my cancer drugs for sugar pills, keeping me sick. I didn't want to go back, but I didn't have a choice. Since that letter a year ago, I'd lost my job, burned through my savings on various medical treatments, and couldn't pay my rent anymore. I actually got an eviction notice like you would see in a movie. Selling the house was the only way to get back on my feet. When I pulled into the driveway, it was like stepping into a time capsule. The sagging roof, peeling paint, and overgrown lawn. It all looked just like I remembered. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, a mix of mold and mothballs, but every now and then I caught a faint whiff of lavender, my mom's old perfume. It made me sick. I immediately opened every window possible. I spent the first night unpacking and clearing some of the clutter she had hoarded over the years. I guess she had gotten deep into weird cult ideology books. They were everywhere. When people are on their deathbeds as she was, it's common for them to cling to or find religion, a god, or even cults that promise to be free. Well, that is what my therapist once told me when I too danced around the idea for a bit. Either way, I went to bed early. I was completely exhausted from the drive. But the next morning, everything changed. When I walked into the kitchen, there was a Polaroid sitting on the counter. It was a picture of me, taken from outside the kitchen window. I was standing there, holding a coffee mug, staring at my phone. But I hadn't been in the kitchen yet that morning, and in the photo I was wearing yesterday's clothes. Someone had taken that picture of me the day before. I told myself it had to be some kids messing with me. Maybe someone from the neighborhood who didn't want the house sold. They'd made it clear to the lawyer they didn't want developers tearing it down. I stayed another night. I had to get this place ready to sell, no matter how many people tried to scare me off. By that evening, my nerves were shot, but I decided to distract myself by tackling the mess in the attic. That's when I found it. The camera. It was an old Polaroid land camera, the same one that my dad used to carry everywhere. He loved that thing, and he was always snapping photos. Me, my mom, the house, random things he thought were interesting, like his gun collection. Next to it was a dusty box filled with old pictures. Most of them were harmless. Me as a kid, my mom waving at the camera, the cliché vintage Disneyland pictures. But near the bottom of the pile, the photos started to change. One of my dad holding the gun, another of him pointing it at the camera, and one of the aftermath, the couch, the wall behind him, stained dark. Finally, there was one of me, a little boy sitting on the floor staring at Dad's lifeless body. I dropped the photos. My hands were shaking. I didn't even know those pictures existed. I was the only one home when it happened. I dialed 911 for Christ's sake. Who the hell had taken them? I picked up the box and went downstairs to throw them in the bins outside. No one needed to see these ever again. That's when I saw the fridge. It was now covered in Polaroids. Dozens of them taped haphazardly across the surface. Each one was of me from the past 2 days. Brushing my teeth alone, eating dinner alone, sleeping in my bed alone, or so I thought. One was from that night. It showed me in the attic, looking through the box of photos. Someone had been in the house, maybe even was still in the house at that moment. Watching me. Waiting. For what? I still don't exactly know. I lost it. I ripped the pictures off the fridge, smashed the camera against the counter, and packed my bags. I wasn't staying there another second. I checked into a cheap motel in town that night, locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and turned on every light in the room. For the first time in days, I felt a little safer, until the banging started. It was just after midnight. Heavy, deliberate bangs on the motel door jolted me awake. I unplugged and grabbed a lamp from the bedside and crept to the peephole. No one was there. I moved the chair, and when I opened the door, I found another Polaroid lying face down on the floor. I flipped it over and froze. It was me, in the motel shower, not 4 hours earlier. I stumbled back, my heart was pounding. My vision was completely blurred, and I felt a wave of nausea hit me. I turned, and there it was, sitting on top of my bag, the camera. Before I could think, my knees buckled. All I remember was hitting my head on the corner of the bed frame before it was lights out. When I came to, I wasn't in the motel anymore. I was back in the house, sitting on my father's old chair. I don't know how I got here. My bag is gone, my clothes are different, everything feels wrong. I'm scared. I don't know where my medication is, and I feel sick to my stomach. Probably from the head knock. I tried the doors and windows, but none of them would open, like they had been glued shut. I'm trapped. Now I'm sitting at the kitchen table, typing this on my laptop. It's the only thing I can think to do. Maybe someone out there will read this. Maybe you will figure out what's happening. Maybe you have had the same experience and know how to get out. But as I write this, I can feel it. The hair on my neck is standing up. There's a coldness behind me, a pressure like someone is watching. I know someone is, I just heard it again. Click. The unmistakable sound of that Polaroid camera. I can't turn around. I won't. Not just yet. My hands are trembling, but I just keep typing, as if finishing this will make it stop. Maybe it's all in my head. Maybe it's the fear. Maybe it's all of it eating away at me. And just now, a Polaroid has floated down from somewhere above me. It has landed right in front of my keyboard. I am scared. It's a picture of me, sitting in my father's chair. There's a gun in my slumped hand, the same one he used. And behind me, the wall is painted red. Every nerve in my body is screaming at me to run, but I can't move. My legs feel bolted to the floor. My pulse thunders in my ears, drowning out every sound except the next one. Click. The camera just went off again, and I heard the Polaroid fall out and hit the floor beside me. Don't look down, idiot. But how can I not? I did. It is of me sitting here right now. If you're reading this, it means it's too late. Please don't come here. Don't try to help. Don't even think about this place, and whatever you do, don't turn around. Click, click. Wait, my husband Matt started to say. I swear my toothbrush was blue this morning. He held it up for me to see. It was green as the grass on the day we met. What are you talking about, honey? It's green. I laughed. I know it's green now, but this morning it was blue, I swear. I know, because blue is my favorite color. And that's why I bought it, blue for me and orange for Yo. His eyes went wide as he looked at my toothbrush. Oh my God, don't start this again. My toothbrush has always been pink, I said, starting to get exasperated. After a few more buts, I swears, and please believe me's, Matt eventually gave up trying to convince me and finished brushing his teeth. I'll go tuck the kids in bed, I said, and walked to their shared room. We had two beautiful little girls, Marcy and Maybelle. They were 5-year-old twins and the light of our lives. Hi, girlies. Hi, Mommy. They shouted in unison. I kissed each of their blonde heads and reached to turn out the lamp. No, wait, Maybelle yelled. Will you read us a story? I suppose we have time for a story, but it has to be a quick one. How about The Dancing Princess? No, not that one. Read us our favorite, The Swan and the Kitten, Marcy said. All right. I found the book on the shelf. Once upon a time. I read until both girls were fast asleep, then walked to my bedroom. How were they? Matt asked. Sweet, as always. They asked me to read their favorite story. The Dancing Princess. Matt smiled wistfully. I laughed. That's what I thought too, but apparently their favorite now is The Swan and the Kitten. Matt sat up in bed. I groaned inwardly. I knew what he was about to say. The Swan and Kitten? Since when? Mary, I know my little girls, and ever since they learned to read, their favorite book has been The Dancing Princess. Matt relaxed. They're getting older. Their interests change. This is just the toothbrush thing all over again. He looked straight at me, and I knew right then and there that I had said the wrong thing. Baby, I'm sorry. Let's just go to sleep. Fine, but I swear to God my toothbrush was blue this morning. Okay, I believe you. Good night. The morning came bright and early. I got up and found Matt in the bathroom staring at his red toothbrush again and muttering. I swear, he was saying. What, did it change colors again? I laughed. He looked at me angrily but said nothing. I went to get the girls dressed and ready for breakfast. "Daddy!" they yelled with huge smiles on their faces. "Hey girls," he said distractedly. "Matt," I whispered, "they want your attention." "I know, it's just I swear our fridge was white yesterday, now it's gray." "Seriously, honey, you're starting to freak me out a bit. You've got to stop this." "Freak you out? What about me? It's like I'm the only one noticing the world is going to shit," he yelled, causing the girls to start crying. "Matt, look what you've done!" But I didn't have to tell him. I could see clear as day how guilty he felt. "God, Mary, I'm sorry," he said sadly. "I think I should just leave for work. I'm only making things worse." He gave the sniffling twins a kiss and walked out the door. I'm sure all the neighbors heard him yell, "Jesus fucking Christ. Since when do I have a fucking truck? Where's my goddamn sedan?" I sighed and turned my attention back to the girls. "Marcy and Maybelle, do you want to go to a park today?" "Sure, Mommy," they said, having forgotten their earlier sadness. I buckled the girls into my van and drove to the park. It was a beautiful sunny day. I saw a couple of my other mom friends and walked over to them. "Wow, your daughter's hair is so pretty today," one of the moms said to me. "Right, I wish I had red hair," another lamented. After a bit, we began to complain about our husbands. "John barely helps out with the baby." "I hear you. Will doesn't do anything." "Well, at least your problems are normal. Mine's been screaming about our toothbrush changing colors." "Maybe you should look into couples therapy," one of them suggested. "Yeah, maybe," I mulled it over. It was a good suggestion, but was therapy really necessary when the extent of your marital problems was the color of toothbrushes? We stayed at the park until the girls were tired and I was hungry. I buckled them up in the hatchback and drove home. Matt would be back from work soon. I hoped he was doing better. It would be terrible if he had embarrassed himself in front of his coworkers, or worse yet, his boss. But as he walked in, I knew from the look on his face that was exactly what had happened. "It's the strangest thing, Mary," he began to say. "What?" I laughed. "What did you call me?" "Mary? That's not my name." "Of course it isn't." He sighed, then said reluctantly, "What is it now?" "Mila, maybe Mary was one of your ex-girlfriends," I suggested. "Anyway, what happened?" He leaned back and closed his eyes. "It's not like you would believe me." "No, please, tell me, honey." "Well, it's the strangest thing. I walked into the office and there was a woman at the front. Tall, brown-haired, very imposing. I introduced myself to her and she asked if I was making a joke or something. I must have looked very confused because she said she's been my boss for the past 9 years. "Yeah, Mrs. Allie Collins. I met her at the Christmas party. Sweet lady." "No, my boss for the past 11 years has been a man. Mr. Adris Cooper." "That is strange, honey, I'm sorry." Even if I knew he was wrong about his boss, I felt bad for him. He truly believed he was right. "I think I just want to go give my daughters a hug. Marcy, Maybelle," he called. I started to laugh. "Boy, you're really struggling with names today, huh?" He looked strangely at me, then again yelled, "Marcy, Maybelle." I detected a note of desperation in his voice. Maybe he had taken some drugs or something. "Madeline and Mason, get your butts in here now and come give your father a kiss," I said for him, correcting their names. "Mason!" Maxwell yelled. "Dear God!" The twins came running in, their brown hair flying. "Dad, what's so urgent you had to yell at me like that?" Mason complained. Maxwell looked at me with horror. "They look like they're 10 fucking years old. Yesterday they were 5 and now one of them's a boy." He put his head in his hands and cried. "Actually, Dad, we're 12, Madison said proudly. Michael got up and went upstairs. "The fucking toothbrush," we heard him yell. "It all started with the goddamn fucking asshole toothbrush. It's purple now. You hear that, Mary, Mila, Mia, whatever the fuck your name is, it's purple." I put the boys to bed, then went to my room. He had cried himself to sleep. I put my arms around him and hoped tomorrow would be better. I missed my husband and hated that he felt so lost. The next morning was better. I found him brushing his teeth, but thankfully not lamenting that it had changed again. I don't think I could have taken another "why is it yellow" today. I'm better now, and my toothbrush can change colors, that's fine. My boss can magically change into a woman, also fine. My children can age 7 years, totally fine, as long as I have all of you. "Children?" I said uneasily. "Do you have a child from another woman you never told me about?" "What are you talking about, Em?" "Our children, Madison and Maybah Mason, whatever." "Mason?" I asked. But he didn't respond. He ran out of the bathroom. I followed. He flung our daughter's bedroom door open and sank to the floor, sobbing. "Honey, what's wrong?" I put my hand on Malachi's shoulder. "What's wrong with Daddy?" Millie cried. "Where's Maybelle?" He yelled. "There is no Maybelle, sweetie. There's only ever been Macy." I'm not sure when she stopped loving me. Maybe when I was laid off from work, or when I was hospitalized for my mental break, or maybe when she started fucking her PT, Matthew. Who knows? All I know is that when she ended it, it broke me. The thought of life without her was incomprehensible to me. Alicia and I had been together since we were 15, high school sweethearts. When we were both 19, I proposed. I still remember how scared I was. God, I was a fumbling mess. But regardless, somehow she said yes, and we began our life together. That was 16 years ago. We were inseparable, unstoppable. That was until June of this year. It replays in my mind over and over. In January, I was laid off from work. Something about cutting costs, you know, the usual shit they hit you with. Unfortunately, that didn't stop the bills rolling in. The mortgage still needed to be paid. Food still had to be put on the table, and her handmade jewelry business wasn't even coming close to covering it. I had always said I would provide for her so she could pursue what she loved to do. Yet here I was, being turned down for every job I applied for, taking out loans anywhere that would allow me to, borrowing from anyone I could. But still, we were days from losing the house. The stress was too much. The guilt was too much. So much so that in March I found myself walking down a busy highway. No clothes, no shoes, and no recollection of how I got there. A passerby had alerted the police, who promptly took me to the local hospital. I was tested for alcohol and drugs, but was found to be completely sober. That's when they came to the conclusion I had suffered a mental break due to stress and sent me to the closest mental health facility. After seeing movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Girl, Interrupted, I really didn't have high hopes for this place, but much to my surprise, it was great. The doctors and nurses were incredibly helpful. The therapy sessions were wonderful, and the other patients were people just like me, who had just lost their way. Alicia had come to visit me a few times, but she seemed off, cold even. I put it down to me overthinking with my current state of mind. After a few months, they had finally found medication that suited me, and coping techniques that helped me calm down. I was finally going home to Alicia, and I couldn't wait. That is, however, until I got home and realized her demeanor I felt at the hospital and put down to my overthinking was, in fact, very real. She looked at me differently, stopped talking to me unless absolutely necessary, started going to the gym more than she was home. Then finally, in mid-June, she hit me with the 5 words I dreaded the most. I can't do this anymore. My heart sank and my knees buckled. I couldn't stop the flood of tears leaking from my eyes. "Please, I'll do anything. Just give me another chance," I pled. I must have looked so pathetic, but I was so overcome with emotion. She was my everything, my reason for living. I couldn't remember life before her, but her expression never changed. She wouldn't even look at me. "I'm sorry. I've met someone else. I tried, I really did. But you've changed. You're not the man I remember. You're like a shell of him. I love you. I always will. But it's not enough." Truth be told, I saw this coming and yet still was somehow caught off guard by it. And with that, she turned and picked up 2 bags, already packed by the doorway. I hadn't even noticed them. And that was it. I was alone. Alone for the first time in my life. No one to turn to. My parents were long gone by now, and any friends I had drifted away from me when I was hospitalized or when I had texted them constantly asking to borrow money. But I at least had my weekly therapy sessions. "You know it's not your fault, Adam. You need to stop blaming yourself," Dr. McAllister said in a reassuring tone, gazing at me over the top frame of her glasses, notebook, and pen in hand. "Unfortunately, things like this happen, but we have to find a way to go on. Have you been doing those written exercises I recommended?" "Yeah," I muttered while staring at the carpet. It was so filthy and cheap-looking. When was the last time it was vacuumed? And God, that smell. What I assumed to be some fruity scented candle that was so overpowering it was sickening. "Have you been taking your medication?" Dr. McAllister said in a condescending tone. I could tell by the way she asked. She doubted me. "Of course I have," I snapped. "But pills can't fix everything." Dr. McAllister sighed. "Listen, Adam, between you and I've been through more breakups than I'd like to admit, even one divorce. Every single one feels like the end of the world. Trust me, I know. But somehow we find a way to carry on. It takes time and a lot of strength, but we manage eventually. I wish I could give you some amazing advice that would instantly take away your pain, but I'm just a therapist. I don't have a magic wand. Unfortunately, when it comes to something like this, it's something you have to get through on your own. The tunnel will be long and dark, but there is light at the end and you will make it." Wow, thanks, Dr. McAllister. I could have got that advice in any bullshit woman's lifestyle magazine, I thought to myself as I sauntered out of her bleak, fruity-smelling office. I left the office and let out a huge sigh. What a waste of time. I had no choice but to go home and resort to my new nightly routine. 2 six-packs and hours of video games. It was my way of shutting my brain off for a few hours. I walked into my eerily empty, silent house, kicked my shoes off and threw my keys in the bowl by the door. I threw my jacket on the couch and made my way to the kitchen. The dishes were piled high. Honestly, the house was a mess. Alicia would be disgusted. But I don't care. There's no one here to see the mess I live in. The mess I am. I made my way to fridge and grabbed a can of Miller. I don't particularly care for the taste, but it was cheap and I certainly wasn't oozing money. I had a divorce to pay for, a house to try and save. I was living on ramen for God's sake. Safe to say I was flat broke. I continued into the living room and threw myself onto the couch with a thud, staring at the dimly lit ceiling. I had made a habit of turning on as little lights as possible. I had to save the electricity money, and to be honest, I always found the dark quite comforting. I wasted hours wandering around in Elden Ring till I couldn't keep my eyes open any longer. Might as well try to sleep. I got up to turn off the TV as I had lost the remote to a moment of rage a couple of weeks back. I stumbled to the TV and shot a glance towards the mirror above the fireplace. I never understood the whole mirror over the fireplace thing. A lot of people aren't even tall enough to see themselves in it. Alicia was one of them, but she insisted on putting this huge vintage rectangular mirror with a gold Baroque border above the fireplace. I always found it tacky, but according to her, I just had no taste. I looked at my reflection and squinted. What happened to me? My face was covered in stubble. My eyes had huge black rings around them. My hair was longer than it should be and completely unkempt. I was disgusting. I stared at myself in awe. I became completely lost in my reflection when suddenly, I smiled. Well, I didn't. My reflection did. At least I think it did. Nah, I must have imagined it. I probably should stop drinking on these meds. I turned the TV off and slowly thudded my way up the stairs. I threw myself in my unmade mess of a bed and stared up at the ceiling, like I always did until I would fall asleep. But sleep never came. I couldn't stop thinking. I couldn't get that face out of my head. My face. But he looked so full of life. So alive. Not like me. Not like the shell I had apparently become. I had to look again. I thudded back down the stairs and into the living room, feeling completely ridiculous as I did so, but I had to see. I found myself in front of the mirror I hated so much, staring with anticipation, and after a few minutes, there he was, mirror me, the man I wanted to be. I stared into his eyes and everything went numb. Minutes passed, hours passed, and next thing I knew, the sun had risen. It was morning. I had stood there all night and was now looking back at that shell of a man, the me I hated, the real me. I felt absolutely insane. How could I stand there all night? Was I hallucinating? Had I officially lost it? The weirdest part was that I felt comforted, cathartic. The way you feel after you've told someone something you've never told anyone before. Like a huge weight was off my shoulders. The pain I had been feeling, the self-loathing, it was all gone. It was like a high. That high was short-lived, however, because the tiredness of not sleeping all night finally hit me like a hard punch to the face. I made my way upstairs and fell asleep the minute I hit the pillow. When I woke, it was already evening. I stared at the time on my phone in shock. Since Alicia had left, I hadn't managed more than a few hours, but today, 12 whole hours. Probably not considered healthy, but God, did I need it. I headed downstairs into the kitchen and grabbed myself a drink of water. I stood against the worktop, sipping my water and flipping through Facebook. I really wish I hadn't. There she was, Alicia. And there he was, the home-wrecking bastard, with his arm around her. They were smiling from ear to ear with a beautiful sunset behind them. It was so generically cheesy, but I was overcome with rage and jealousy. She never looked that happy with me. Never. Had our relationship meant nothing to her? Was I that easy to forget? Did our vows even mean anything? In sickness and in health? Apparently not. For richer? For poor? Ha! Yeah, right. I gripped the glass so hard I felt it crack beneath my fingers. I needed him. I needed Mirror Me. I ran to the mirror and stared at him, hands bracing the shelf above the fireplace, rocking and forth. Rage coursing through me. Then, again after a few moments, he appeared. Same smile, same reassuring eyes. And I was numb again. Pure bliss. This became my daily routine. Sleep, eat, and spend time with Mirror Me. He was my safe space, my sanctuary, my best friend. I didn't need anyone else. I didn't need to feel or think. He started appearing to me on all the mirrors I had in the house, so I was never alone. And every day that I saw him, his smile seemed even bigger. The only downfall was, every day after my mirror therapy, when the sun rose, the wave of tiredness that hit me was worse than the day before. I wasn't even making it to the bed anymore. I was just sleeping on the couch. It was now early October. The dark nights were getting longer, which meant more time with Mirror Me. It was great, even if his smile had now gotten unsettlingly big. I stared into his eyes and lost myself, like I did every night, when suddenly I was shocked back into reality by a cheerful jingle. I glanced around the room in a confused daze. What the hell was that? It took me a few seconds to come to the realization. It was my phone. I can't remember the last time it went. I almost forgot what it sounded like. I scrambled over to my phone and was instantly taken aback to see who was calling. A picture of Alicia and I filled the screen. What the fuck does she want? I took a deep breath and answered. Adam? She inquired. I expected hearing her voice to send me into a spiral, but I felt nothing. Nada. Not a thing. Adam? Are you there? What do you want, Alicia? I bluntly asked. She sounded caught off guard. There's no need to be hostile. I know we left each other on bad terms, but I just wanted to check on you. I passed the house a few times this week and the house was in complete darkness. Are you I'm fine, I snapped. And how I am or what I'm doing is no longer your concern, nor is it your business. Adam, Alicia interjected. We may not be together anymore, but I still care about you. I couldn't live with myself knowing you were sitting suffering. I interrupted her with hysterical laughter. You care about me? Did you care about me when you were disappearing to fuck him? In fact, you know what? I don't care. I don't care anymore. I'm not wasting my breath on you. I don't need you. I don't need anyone. I hate you, and I genuinely hope the rest of your life is full of misery and suffering. I was met with silence from the other end of the phone. I broke it by delivering one final blow. Now, if you're done snooping to see if I'm still pining after you, I'd like to go and get back to enjoying my freedom. I don't want to hear your shrill voice in my ears again. You make me sick. And with that, I hung up. I was shocked at myself. Yeah, I was mad at her, sure, but I still loved her. Why did I talk to her like that? I would never talk to her like that. That was when I realized I was smiling. So hard it hurt my cheeks. I turned to mirror and noticed I was smiling just like him, and instead of the comfort it usually gave me, it filled me with unease. Something felt wrong, very wrong. I slowly stood up and backed out of the room. I needed to get to a room without a mirror. I needed to be alone for a minute. I needed to be away from him. I ran to our spare room. I knew that was mirror-free at least. I sat on the end of the bed. I don't understand what's going on. I don't know what to do. I can't exactly call the police and tell them I think there's something wrong with the me in the mirror. Nor can I call my therapist, because the only help I'll get is a straight jacket and a padded room. So I turned to the only place I could, the internet. There are all sorts of people on there. Surely at least one is bound to believe me or know something. And so I Googled about mirror entities, demons, whatever I could think of, and scoured the results from top to bottom. That's when I saw a post on a forum amply titled, "Don't Trust the Other You in the Mirror." I stared in awe. I don't like the sound of this. I clicked and began to read. The post was by a user named Spiritwalker67. It read, "Okay, I know I'm going to sound insane, but I couldn't live with myself if I knew I hadn't at least tried to warn others. I had been attending AA meetings regularly. I had hit rock bottom and was really struggling. I was at my lowest when a woman named Tina approached me and asked if we could be each other's sponsors. I wasn't super into the idea, but I was willing to try. She was lovely and really seemed to have it together, so much that I honestly wondered why she was even there. It was during our fourth phone call that she told me something I wish she hadn't. She could tell I was sinking further and had a suggestion for me. I know this is going to sound crazy, but please don't dismiss it without trying at least once." I was already rolling my eyes, but I thought I'd hear her out. I was desperate. That's when she told me about something she had named mirror therapy. She told me to dim the lights in my apartment and stare at myself in a mirror and meditate, lose myself. She again stated she knew how crazy this sounded, but assured me that the sense of inner peace I would feel would be worth it. Fuck it. As I said, I was desperate. I figured I'd try. And much to my amazement, it worked beyond belief. Not only that, but I felt like my reflection was staring at me with kind reassurance. The look I had so wished my family and friends had given me. I became addicted to mirror therapy. I lived for it. However, I noticed that when I wasn't at the mirror, I was overcome with lethargy. It was unbearable. If I left the house, I was like a zombie. It wasn't until I went to AA a few weeks later and saw Tina that I put two and two together. Tina wandered in, but she wasn't her usual odd, quirky self. No, she was empty, dazed. I walked up to her to ask if she was okay, and audibly gasped when she turned to face me with a face like a blank sheet of paper, and eyes with no shine or life in them. She was like an empty vessel, and that's when it started to come together. My lethargy, Tina's zombie-like state. It was the mirrors, it had to be. I had no other explanation. I refused to believe Tina had relapsed or anything like that because she was doing so well and really had her mind set on getting her life together. I didn't know where to turn. The internet was providing nothing, so I went to the only other place I could think of for answers. The library. I scoured the occult section from top to bottom for any mention of mirrors. It was the only place I could think to look, and eventually I found something, and it filled me with anxiety. It spoke about spirits within the mirror, and how when you were at your most vulnerable, the veil between us and them was in a weakened state. It went on to explain that every time you look into the mirror or other realm, the being at the other side takes pieces of your soul until eventually there's nothing left and you are empty. The only way to save yourself is to close their doorway forever. In other words, break all your mirrors. It's that simple. And so I headed home and did just that. Within weeks, my energy came back and I was back to my old struggling self, which I never thought I'd miss. Again, I know I sound insane, but in hopes I reach just one stranger out there, going through what Tina and I went through, please take my advice and don't trust the other you in the mirror. Destroy it before it destroys you. I sat there with my mouth agape. I was shocked, scared, and for some reason, felt betrayed. Even though Mirror Me never spoke, I still felt like he had lied to me. He had given me a false sense of security, made me feel like I had a friend. I had no choice but to say goodbye to the friend I'd counted on for months, who never judged me or made me feel crazy. But I couldn't say goodbye without first confronting him. Stupid. I know. It's not like he was going to answer me. But I had to get it off my chest, and I at least needed this relationship to have some closure. I wandered back down the stairs, slowly walking, eyes to the ground towards the mirror. I couldn't help but feel heartbreak. I slowly rose my eyes to the fireplace mirror I had grown to love, and was greeted by my familiar, comforting face. His smile was even bigger than last time. Now that I knew what I did about him, that smile made me incredibly uncomfortable. I looked him in the eyes. I know what you are. I know what you're doing. I'm sorry, but I can't let you have me. My eyes fell to the ground. Even knowing what you are, I still can't help but want to thank you. You were the only one who was there for me at my lowest. I won't forget you. I looked up to meet his gaze one last time and felt the most intense fear I've ever felt surge through my body. That smile was gone. Now he was frowning. Not just frowning, it was indescribable, full of anger. It was evil. His eyes were so wide they looked like they were about to pop out of his head at any moment. But I couldn't look away. That's when he did something that made me feel fear like I had never felt before. His eyes got wider and his mouth began to open, wider and wider. Not horizontally like a smile, but vertically. Wider than was humanly possible. I took a step back, trying not to take my eyes off him as I mindlessly reached around the room, trying to grab anything heavy enough to shatter that god-awful face. My aimless flailing was getting me nowhere, and I averted my gaze for less than a second to grab the huge, ugly candle holder on the coffee table that Alicia had got one Christmas from her mother. As I turned back to throw it, I was met with something I couldn't believe I was seeing. Hands. So many hands, seeping from every part of the mirror, reaching for me, grabbing for me. I closed my eyes tightly and threw a Hail Mary. I couldn't open my eyes. I just prayed and waited for the obscene amount of hands to grab me and do whatever they were going to do to me. When suddenly, the sound of glass cracking, a beautiful choir of shattering. I opened my eyes to see that mirror I had grown so fond of had broken into 100 pieces. I had never felt such relief. I exhaled hard. It was like I had been holding my breath for what felt like minutes without even realizing. I ran upstairs and smashed all the other small mirrors that remained within the house without looking at them. It was done. It was over. And with that, he was gone. Forever. My friend. My therapist. My mirror me. My energy gradually returned to me over the weeks, and so did my pain and sadness. But I'd rather feel that than nothing at all. I still see him in my dreams, though. Almost every night, actually. Sometimes he has that comforting smile I had grown so attached to, but other times he has that god-awful stretched, otherworldly mouth and frightfully wide eyes. I hate those dreams. But at least I'm alive, soul intact, and starting to get my life back on track little by little. So I'll leave you with this. The same advice Spirit Walker 67 gave me, which saved my life. No matter how good it makes you feel, no matter how amazingly at peace you are, don't trust the other you in the mirror. It was winter when it happened, just 2 days after Christmas. At the time, I was 13 years old. Josh was 6 months older. Josh was my best friend and the only kid around my age living nearby. We had been friends for 4 years when my family moved to the neighborhood. It was a quiet suburban area, with mostly lower middle to upper middle class families. Josh's parents, however, were the exception. They were probably the wealthiest family living there, and their house was the oldest and most expensive one as well. They renovated it when they moved in before Josh was born. It couldn't have been cheap, but money wasn't an issue for them. Josh and I went to different schools. His parents were very strict about educational opportunities and chose a private school outside the city, but nevertheless, we always hung out whenever we could after school. It rarely snowed during winter in our city, and that year was no exception. However, it rained constantly, so we spent most of our time playing in Josh's room. It wasn't an issue for me. I always had fun spending time with him, and he had access to way more games than my parents were willing to afford. As usual, that day I went to his house. I had not seen him since before Christmas. His mother opened the door shortly after I rang the doorbell. "Good morning, Mrs. Anderson." "Good morning, Matt. Josh is waiting upstairs. Let me take your raincoat." I thanked her, took off my raincoat and boots and went upstairs. The house was quite large, with 3 floors and a basement. Josh's room was on the top floor. He was lying on his bed playing with his Game Boy. The door was open. "Hey," I said. He immediately turned it off as he noticed me and his eyes shined. "Matt, there is something I must show you," he said with a big smile. Then he went to the cupboard and took something from it. "What is it?" I asked and let myself inside, sitting on the bed. I expected him to show me the new video games or toys his parents bought him for Christmas. To my surprise, instead, he was holding a book. "You read books now?" I asked, giggling. "Of course not, dummy, but look at this." He handed me the book. It was a rather thick book with a brown leather cover. It was in good condition, although quite old. There was no title or any other name on its cover. I opened it and flipped through its yellow pages. The pages, are they all blank? It's just an empty old book, I asked, quite puzzled. Surely an unusual thing to find, but it didn't match the excitement Josh showed. But he was already moving stuff from the cupboard while I was looking at the book. "That's not all. Come look at what I found behind it." The large cupboard was an old piece of furniture. It probably was in the house even before Josh's parents moved in. Behind the two glass doors, there were 4 shelves, mostly filled with toys and video games, except for the bottom shelf, which was lined with school-related books. Down here on the bottom shelf, look. Josh had removed most of the books. I got off the bed, crouched, and looked at the bottom shelf. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed the back of the bottom shelf wasn't solid. There was a raised panel at the left side, unlike the right side, which shared the same appearance as the other shelves. Looking closer, it appeared to be a sliding panel, though small and thin. It had no handle or knob, and didn't extend to the upper shelves. It was about 2 feet long, less than half the length of the cupboard. "Have you tried opening it?" I asked, fascinated, without looking away. "Give it a try," replied Josh with a grin while handing me a flashlight. I dropped down on all 4 and slid the panel to the right side. I couldn't see much on the other side because it was too dark. The sunlight didn't reach far down there, as neither of the 2 windows in the room faced the cupboard directly. I turned on the flashlight and pointed it at the bottom shelf. The hidden compartment extended for around 2 feet further into the wall. Aside from the large quantity of dust, there was nothing there. The compartment had more space to the left, but I couldn't see what else was there. "A secret compartment? Looks empty." "Look more to the left. You need to put your whole head in there to see better." "Don't worry, there are no spiders or other stuff like that," I checked. "I'd know you'd be scared shitless otherwise." I ignored his remark, slid the flashlight to the other side of the door, and pointed it toward the left side of the compartment, then reluctantly crawled inside the cupboard until my head was past the sliding door, holding my breath to avoid the dust entering my mouth. The compartment must have been 3 feet tall at most, and then there were stairs. The wooden steps led down further in the compartment, the same width as the rest of the space. At the end of those steps, there was a wooden wall. The path seemed to continue to the right. I pulled myself out of the cupboard. "Holy crap, have you been down there?" "Not yet, I was waiting for you. But let me explain first. Yesterday I wanted to try again that shooter game we played last month and noticed the empty book on the bottom shelf." He pointed at the old book I left on the bed. "That's when I found the sliding panel behind it. I never noticed it before." I had never seen the book either in the cupboard before yesterday. The maid must have found it somewhere else and put it there. Given how old it is, I think it's a treasure map. The passage must have been built in order to hide something valuable, don't you think? But it's completely blank. What kind of treasure map is it? Maybe it's in code or invisible ink, but it doesn't matter. We have to figure out what's at the end of the passage now. We could discover a treasure that has been buried for centuries. To be honest, I can't say I had no fear whatsoever to enter in that narrow passage. But just like Josh, I was also brimming with curiosity to know what was hidden in there. And I had never turned down one of Josh's adventure proposals. "Have you asked your parents about it?" "Number, and you can't tell yours either." His expression grew worried for a moment. "Well, I asked Dad if there were any secret passages in the house, and he told me that when he bought it, there wasn't any entrance or doorway that had to be walled off. But if I tell them now, my mom is going to forbid it, saying it's too old and dangerous, and I want to make sure that we are the first people to discover it." His eyes were shining with excitement. No way anyone was going to make a 13-year-old change his mind on this, especially Josh. He has always been the kind of kid that looked forward to possible mysteries. "What are we waiting for?" I said, with an unusually high tone of voice. His enthusiasm convinced me. "Wait here for a moment, I need to get something first." He bolted outside the room. I sat on the bed and picked up the book. It was still raining outside. I flipped through the pages again. They were still blank and old. Then I noticed 2 ink stains on the back of the cover page. Josh entered the room, locking the door. He was carrying another flashlight, bigger and presumably more powerful than the one he gave me. I assumed he'd borrowed it from his dad. Now I can explore properly. Mom is about to go buy groceries. She shouldn't be back for around an hour and a half. He turned on the TV and cranked up the volume. Did you see this? I showed him the ink stains. No idea, I must have missed it yesterday. I shrugged and put the book on the bed. I will give you the honor of going first, I said and grabbed the flashlight. Josh put his flashlight in one of his front pockets. Then he laid supine on the floor and started sliding towards the secret passage, feet first and arms raised up in order to fit through the panel. I saw him slowly disappear into the passage. I got on my knees and waited for my turn. Around a minute or two later, I heard him shout from inside the passage. Wow. Okay, Matt, you can come in. I imitated his position and started sliding. There was some wiggle room, so it wasn't an issue fitting through the passage, although I struggled to believe a grown adult could make it. The hardest part was the 90-degree turn when having to face the stairs. I had to contort my body into a very awkward position and make sure not to hit my head on the ceiling. A claustrophobic person would likely have a panic attack in there. Eventually, I positioned myself properly at the top of the stairs and started sliding down them. At the end of the stairs, the ceiling was tall enough for me to stand up. I took the flashlight from my pants and turned it on, then turned the corner. Finally, you took forever. Josh had pointed the flashlight at me. Then he turned around and illuminated the surroundings. I have never seen anything like this before. It was pitch black and there was no other light source. We were standing in what seemed to be a corridor. It was wider than the passage we came through, but not wide enough so that both of us could stand shoulder to shoulder. I started looking around with my flashlight. The walls and ceiling were made of wooden planks, the same dark brown color of the stairs and cupboard. There was around a foot of space above our heads. The walls were also made of the same wood, but instead of planks, the walls featured 2 rows of raised panel patterns, repeated horizontally. It didn't look like any of them could slide or open. I could tell from the dust that the place was very old and no one had been in there for ages. Despite that, I find it weird how the wood didn't seem to contain cracks, signs of deformation from humidity or damage from bugs despite being seemingly left untouched for so long. Where the hell did we end up? This doesn't look like your basement. That space was weird. I had never seen a room like that in Josh's house, so I assumed we were underground, but from the stairs we descended, we had gone down 1 floor at most, let alone 3. No idea, but look, it doesn't end here. Josh was shining his light at the end of the corridor. Around 30 feet further, there was a wall, but the path continued to both left and right. Let's check it out, Josh said as he started walking. I hesitated for a moment, then hurried to follow him. That corridor definitely had a creepy vibe. We reached the end of the corridor and looked at the possible options. In both directions, there was another corridor the same length as before, each of them ending with a turn to the left as the only possible path. Which way do we go now? Asked Josh, pointing his flashlight to the seemingly identical corridor and then the opposite one. Josh, are you sure we should continue? We don't know where we could end up. Come on, don't be a chicken, Matt. Still afraid of the dark? What are you, a 3rd grader? It's not that... Listen, there are no sounds whatsoever. I can't hear the TV or the rain or the cars outside. And we're not far from your room. This place is giving me the creeps. We'll just have to run back there in case we end up in someone else's basement. Come on, let's go to the left, he replied as he brushed off my concerns and started walking. I really wanted to argue back, but I just followed him there. At the end of the corridor, there was another one that ended with the same crossroad as the first. Let's go back for now. We seriously risk getting lost now. We need a way to get back to your room. My voice was nervous now. I was afraid to continue, but also I was afraid that Josh would go on alone if I turned back. Fine, we'll go back for now, but just so we can come back better prepared, all right? I really want to find the treasure. I let out a sigh of relief as we turned back. I think it's better if we make a map so we don't get lost. We should also wear shoes. We both were only wearing socks. Sounds good. What do you think it's this place? Maybe an abandoned mining gallery. Although my grandpa never told me anything about this town being a former mining colony. So we could find a huge pile of gold at the end. Very interesting. Let's hurry and get what we need before Mom comes back. Less than 20 minutes had passed since we left. Once back in Josh's room, he handed me the backpack and a pair of his sneakers. I sketched a map of the layout on a notebook and put it in the backpack along with some pens. I'm not sure why, but I brought the old empty book too. Josh came back with a couple of water bottles and we put on the sneakers, then entered the passage for the second time. I convinced him to give me the large flashlight. We also stopped at every corner to update the map. I was still uneasy the whole time, although I eventually became more comfortable with the darkness. The silence still creeped me out. I kept glancing behind us, half expecting a monster to come rushing at any moment. Josh didn't talk as much as he normally did, but I could tell he wasn't really afraid. I felt reassured in his presence. I would never have come down here alone. Around 15 minutes and 6 corridors later, we ended up in an empty room. We never found another split path after the first 2 we found. The room was as large as Josh's bedroom, if not more. The walls, floor, and ceiling were not apparently different from the corridors. "It's a dead end?" Josh asked, with a slight disappointment in its tone. "Maybe we took the wrong turn earlier. Or maybe there is really no treasure," I said, while finishing the map in the notebook. "Let's take a closer look around." I put the notebook in the backpack and we examined the room. Upon closer inspection, the edges of the room were damp. Water had recently leaked through. On the floor in the center of the room, there was a carved circle. The style reminded me of the patterns on the walls. "Maybe the treasure is below the floor right here?" Josh stomped the point of his foot down a few times. "That didn't sound like it's hollow underneath. But even if there is, you think we can dig it out by ourselves?" Neither of us were particularly eager to pry the floorboards with our bare hands or borrow more of Josh's father's tools. "No way. I guess we didn't think that far ahead. I wonder what's the point of this room," he said while still looking around for any more clues. "Maybe there was another entrance that was blocked off. Could be like that." I pulled out the map from the backpack. "We should get back before your mom is home. We still have time for the alternate paths we didn't choose. Let's take a small detour," added Josh. We had chosen both directions at random so far. We backtracked to the second crossroad and went the other path. To our surprise, both split paths were dead ends, the corridor ending without any room or discernible feature on the walls. We assumed they had been blocked off at some point, just like the empty room we found. Josh was speculating about when was the last time someone else walked these corridors and the age of the whole place, when I suddenly froze in my steps. I heard a faint sound, like a step or knock on the wood far in the distance. "I think it's at least 100 years old. No, actually, I think it's around the Founding Fathers' time." Josh turned back as he noticed I had stopped. "Matt? What happened?" I gestured to him to be quiet and then kept listening for a while. I couldn't hear anything but our breaths. "Did you hear it?" I asked Josh. He was looking at me puzzled. "Number hear what?" "Never mind. I thought I heard a sound coming from the corridor. I guess it was a rat or a water leak somewhere." We got back to Josh's room without anything else happening. Not long after Josh's mother came back home, we played video games while waiting for lunch. "I think we should tell your parents. There is nothing else we can really do there, isn't it?" Going back into that darkness didn't excite me much at this point. To my surprise, Josh agreed. "All right, but my mother is going to kill me if she finds out we explored without telling them. Let's say we only went as far as down the stairs." The enthusiasm in his voice had mostly died down now. "Got it. They would have found out at some point anyway. I'm bummed we didn't find the treasure, or anything else to bring, really. Imagine telling people you found a treasure in a hidden maze below your house." "We have the book, although no proof it's related to the maze. We could ask your parents about that as well." I picked the book from the bed and started flipping through its pages again. "I guess there's that. Oh wait, I forgot. I'm such an idiot. It completely slipped my mind," soughed Josh as he slapped his hand on his forehead. Then he searched through a drawer on its desk. He showed me a digital camera. "I got this for Christmas from my uncle. I wanted to tell you, but the passage made me forget about it." "That's cool. I bet you can take good pictures with it," I said while flipping the pages, a bit envious as my parents definitely couldn't afford that. "That's not the point. We could have taken pictures of the maze. I mean, think about showing a picture of us in that room at the end. This way we have proof of our exploration." His enthusiasm had returned. "You mean, we go back to the empty room?" "Yes. Later this afternoon, of course. Come on, just one more time. We can tell our parents after that." "All right, we'll do it." I was a bit reluctant to go back in, but I knew Josh would be disappointed if I turned him down. "Maybe—" "What?" said Josh while fiddling with the camera options. "Matt." He looked at me and then at the book. The last page on the book now had a circle that surrounded the 2 ink stains. "Do you remember this being here earlier?" No, I don't. I only remember the two stains. That's really strange. We kept looking through the book for around a few minutes without either of us saying a word, worried expressions on our faces. It must have been there before as well. I think we just missed it because our attention was caught by the stains. It's called an optical illusion or something like that, I said, breaking the silence, trying to rationalize. Josh didn't answer. Then we heard his mother calling us for lunch. You're right. That must be it. Let's go. Exploring made me hungry. We started eating in silence. Did we really miss the circle earlier? It took up almost the whole page. But also, would it be possible that someone wrote on the book while we didn't notice? I never took it out from the backpack the whole time we were in the maze. Then Josh's mother asked me what I was studying in class, and we ended up talking about school. We finished eating and went back to Josh's room. It was still raining outside. At 3:30 p.m. we started entering the passage. At that time we were sure Josh's mom would be watching his favorite TV show, which gave us enough time to spare. Like usual, Josh went in first. I passed him the backpack, and then it was my turn. I slid down the stairs and got up. I turned on the flashlight and noticed the backpack was on the floor, in the middle of the corridor. I attempted to look for Josh when something pushed me and screamed. I screamed too and fell back onto the stairs, my heart skipping a beat. Josh was laughing, fighting back the tears. He had crouched near the stairs and turned off his flashlight in order to remain hidden for his prank. Holy shit, Matt, you should have seen your face. He extended his hand and I grabbed it to stand back up. Very funny, asshole. Your face is really scary up close. I tried to let out a smile and picked up the backpack. We both burst out laughing. We quickly made it to the final room. Josh had taken out the camera and took a few pictures of the walls, the circle on the floor and the corridors. Then we took a selfie in front of the room. We checked the pictures and were satisfied with the results. We can go back now. I'll make sure to print a copy of this one. Maybe we could even send it to the local newspaper, he said with a grin. Then he handed me the camera. Josh took out a couple of chocolate bars from his pocket, handing me one. Hungry? We ate in the darkness as we started heading back. Not long after, Josh was talking about the TV show he watched last night. He stopped talking and we immediately stopped walking. I unmistakably heard that sound again. This time it was clear someone or something knocked on the wood. We stood in silence for a few more seconds, holding our breaths. Then we heard it again. Come on, Matt, it's probably a rat. This place is old as fuck, don't you remember? I felt the tension in his voice. Fear was slowly creeping up on us. Neither of us wanted to move. We continued to stand there motionless until we heard it for the third time. Now we could tell it was coming from the direction of the empty room. The intervals were getting shorter. I have a bad feeling. Get the book, I said, then turned my back towards Josh while pointing the light towards the end of the corridor. It's just a rat, I'm sure of it. Josh hesitated for a moment, then opened the backpack and got the book. Check the last page. I turned around and pointed my light on the book. The last page now had an X mark along the two ink stains inside the circle. We were certain it wasn't there before. There was another knock sound. My heart raced. I was sweating despite the winter temperatures. What the fuck? I could tell from Josh's voice that he was as afraid too now. Then we heard another knock. It was now closer. Our flashlights were immediately pointed to the end of the corridor, but there was nothing. Then I shined my light on the floor below it and noticed something. A dark water was seeping up through the floorboards. Josh, we have to go. Now, I said while still looking at the end of the corridor. Another knock sound followed. Yes, let's get the fuck out of here. I don't like this. It felt like the last knock came from around the corner. I attempted to look at the map in order to make sure to not waste time with dead ends, and then I let out a scream as my eyes landed on the book. Now, on the page next to the one with the ink stains, there were two names listed. Josh and Matt, written in blood. Josh screamed as well and dropped the book on the ground. Then we heard another knock. It was clear it was coming from the walls in this corridor. Fuck, 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 fuck. Let's run, fast. We started running as fast as we could through the corridors. I had the map, so I was in front, shouting the direction to take. The knocking multiplied, echoing every few seconds. They were coming from all around us. I turned the last corner and I could see the light coming from the passage above the stairs. We regained some hope. The water had risen high enough that my shoes were soaked. We're close now. Josh, let's go, I shouted as I stopped to catch my breath. Then I heard a ripping noise from behind me, followed by a strangled cry. I felt something sprayed on my arm. I turned around in what felt like an eternity. My flashlight had first illuminated one of those raised panels on the wall, right next to where Josh was. The panel had slid to the side, and a couple of long, mangled arms that looked like made of rotten, swollen flesh had come out of it. Bones protruded from them, as well as in place of where the hands should have been. My light then illuminated Josh. His eyes were filled with tears, and blood had come out of his mouth. Another pair of arms were gripping him. They had sliced him open from his chest to his neck. His blood was on my shirt. I stood still as time stopped. Memories of the time I spent with Josh came to me all at once. Then a split second later, I charged at the arms, hitting them using the flashlight with all the force I could muster while crying and screaming his name. I was getting cut by the sharp bones, and the plastic flashlight broke. I didn't feel the pain in that moment, nor was I afraid of getting catched by the arms myself. My biggest fear now was losing Josh in this forsaken place. I continued hitting them and trying to pull Josh away, but my effort was in vain. Another pair of those grotesque arms emerged from the wall. I felt the water was now at my knees. Then I heard his voice, now a whisper for the last time. Matt. I couldn't see his face well as my flashlight had broken. Then two shiny gray eyes appeared behind him, visible in the dark. He is ours now. A sinister and childlike voice echoed from the darkness all around. Hope had left my heart. I dropped what remained of the flashlight. The adrenaline rush ended at that moment, and the fear immediately came back. The pain from my injuries hit me all at once. Tears kept rolling down my eyes. I tried to scream, but I couldn't. I ran towards the stairs, incapable of overcoming the fear. I rushed through the stairs as fast as possible, getting bruises while crawling through the cupboard passage. Now my whole body was hurting like hell. I painted heavily once reached Josh's bedroom, crying with my heart still racing like crazy. I ran outside the room screaming for help. Josh's mother quickly arrived. She couldn't make sense of what I was saying, and her worry deepened when she saw my state and realized Josh was missing. She made me wait downstairs while she went in the bedroom. I realized I still had the backpack on. Trying to calm down, I searched for one of the water bottles. Then my heart sank again. The book was there, despite Josh having dropped it on the ground earlier. I threw it at the wall and let out a scream. The book had opened on the last page as it fell down after hitting the wall. The cover page was empty now. The ink marks were gone. But the page with our names was still there, and Josh had been striked out. I ran outside the house, still screaming and crying. Josh's father had heard the commotion and had stopped working on the Christmas tree in the front lawn as he made his way inside, while Josh's mom had called the police, worried to death by her son's disappearance. The police and an ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, and along with my parents and my sisters. I had stopped crying, and now I had been sitting at the dining table where we ate lunch earlier, staring at the wall. I told them everything that had happened since that morning. The doctors bandaged my arms but found no serious injury. The police searched the house but couldn't find anything. I asked to show them the passage. I insisted. My mother argued, but my father gave in. Two police officers, Josh's father and my dad, accompanied me to Josh's bedroom. I checked the bottom shelf of the cupboard, and I couldn't believe it, but the sliding panel was gone. The back of the cupboard didn't have any hidden passage. I felt the tears welling up again. Desperate, I tried to move the cupboard, but it didn't budge. My dad and a police officer helped me and pushed it away from the wall. The wall was also completely lacking any passage or sign of an entrance, and so was the entire room. I was speechless. Then I thought about the book. We looked everywhere, but the book was gone. The police said no book or anything else had been taken from the scene, and that no one had seen anything like that. Josh's parents also said they had never seen such a book. I looked through the backpack and turned on the camera. It still worked. I checked the gallery, and all the photos we took today turned out completely black, as if the camera lens had been obstructed the entire time. But I knew the pictures looked fine when we checked them earlier. Only pictures Josh had taken in the previous days remained. I spent the rest of the day in the hospital. That night I couldn't sleep, so they gave me something to help. The blood on my shirt was found to match Josh's DNA. He was declared missing, and a massive search effort followed. The case made news for months in the town. Everyone acquainted with Josh was questioned, including nearly everyone at his school, the neighbors and the maid. Even his parents were considered suspects at one point. The police's theory was that an intruder had broken into the bedroom, brutalized Josh, and kidnapped him for ransom. all while I supposedly watched. My brain blocked out the episode and came up with the maze story as a coping mechanism. However, there were no signs of a forced intrusion, and no ransom request ever came. Josh's parents never noticed anybody else either, and didn't hear any sounds until my scream. The windows were still locked. No trace of Josh was ever found, not his body, the book, or any sign of the maze. The case became cold and the investigation was closed after 2 years. The Anderson were heartbroken after losing their only child. They continued with their search. They hired private investigators, combed through every inch of the house, even the foundations, and searched historical archives but found nothing. They went bankrupt a few years later and divorced. Lauren Anderson fell catatonic and was sent to a mental facility. Andrew Anderson committed suicide 10 years after Josh's death. In the meanwhile, me and my parents temporarily moved to my grandparents' house, as I could never sleep in that neighborhood again. We later moved to a different city in the following months, and halfway through high school we moved again out of state. I had trouble sleeping at night for years. Even today I need to keep a light turned on or I won't fall asleep. It's been 16 years since that day. I graduated law school and got a decently rewarding job. For a while I even found love and a solid group of friends. But the nightmares never stopped. In my dreams I'm running alone in the corridors of the maze and I can't find the way out. I always end up in front of Josh as he slowly dies, while I'm unable to do anything but run away. I never stop thinking about that day. Every time I try to forget, it comes back the next morning. I kept asking myself why Josh had to die. Why not me? Why did it happen right when we were about to leave? And not the first or second time we entered. Why only Josh? The only answer I could come up with is that whatever killed Josh enjoyed toying with us, thriving on our fear, feeding on the moment it crushed our hopes of escape. Maybe I'm wrong, as I can't explain why I was left alive. As a result, I have issues opening up and keeping long-term connections, as I fear it might happen again. My friend Mark is the exception, however. I met him in college and we ended up working at the same law firm. I worked up the courage to tell my story because of what happened recently with Mark. He was moving into the new house he bought, with his wife and 5-year-old daughter, and asked me for help. I was putting coats in an old wardrobe in his bedroom when I noticed something in the corner. It was the book. That damn book. It was all empty, like the first day Josh found it. And the sliding panel was there as well. I asked Mark about it. He told me he had never seen the book before. The wardrobe came with the house. I wanted to beg him to move out, to never go back to that house. But he wouldn't believe me. No sane person would. So I made up a crazy story about a rare invasive bug species my father was very knowledgeable about, and how he needed to call a specialized company and stay out of the house for a couple of days. He was freaked out by my behavior, but went along with it due to being a friend for many years. Not sure if he believed the story. I promised I would handle it and explain everything afterward. Sorry, Mark. I'm writing this now because I'm going back to the maze and I'm bringing gasoline. I don't expect to return. I don't know if I can stop it from appearing again or if I can avenge Josh. But if my name is still in that book, I have to remove it, one way or another.